Tonight, we're exploring the complete history of legendary and mythical Pokémon. This is a fascinating topic, but I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Imagine a time, before the grass rustled in the wind of the Kanto plains, before the waves crashed against the jagged cliffs of Hoenn, and before the very first Pokeball was ever forged from an apricorn. In the beginning, there was nothing but a silent, shimmering void. It is in this emptiness that our story begins, with a single heartbeat that echoed across a vacuum, sparking the birth of an entire multiverse. This is the story of the architects of existence, the guardians of the elements, and the shadows that linger in the corners of our dreams. We often look at legendary and mythical Pokémon as mere prizes to be caught, as powerful entries in a digital encyclopedia, or as the ultimate challenge for a trainer seeking glory. But to the people who inhabit the world of Pokémon, these beings are so much more. They are the living manifestations of the laws of physics. They are the personification of human emotion, the literal fabric of space and time, and the very ground beneath our feet. To study them is to study the history of the universe itself. The mystery of these beings lies in the thin, blurry line between fact and folklore. In the Sinnoh region, children grow up hearing bedtime stories about a great being who shaped the world with 1,000 arms. In the Johto region, elders whisper of a magnificent bird of fire that can grant eternal happiness to those who see it. In the distant reaches of Alola, the legends speak not of gods, but of travelers from beyond the stars, visitors from a dimension made of light. Each region has its own truth, its own pantheon, and its own unique way of explaining why the world works the way it does. Yet, when we step back and look at the grand tapestry of the entire Pokémon world, a stunningly complex and interconnected chronology, a sequence of events that stretches back billions of years, from the first spark of creation to the modern era of scientific discovery and artificial life. Why does it matter that we understand this history? Because the stakes of these legends are nothing less than the survival of reality. When the land and the sea clash in a primal struggle for dominance, the entire ecosystem hangs in the balance. When the flow of time or the stability of space is threatened, the very concept of tomorrow begins to unravel. These Pokémon are not just powerful animals, they are the gears in a cosmic machine. If one gear slips, the machine breaks. Throughout history, humans have tried to harness this power, sometimes out of a desire for peace, and sometimes out of a hunger for absolute control. We have seen kings use the power of dragons to build empires, and we have seen modern organizations tempt to play God by recreating the ancient past in a laboratory. Every time humanity touches the divine, the world changes forever. But as we peel back the layers of these stories, we find ourselves faced with profound questions. Is Arceus truly the creator of all things, or is it simply the most powerful being we have the capacity to perceive? Is Mew the ancestor of all Pokémon, or is it a genetic blueprint left behind by a higher power? Why do some legends seem to care for humanity, acting as guardians and protectors, while others represent the most destructive forces of nature, indifferent to the lives of those caught in their wake? And perhaps most intriguingly, what happens when the myths of the past meet the technology of the future? Tonight, we are going to walk through the ages. We will start at the very moment the void was pierced by light. We will watch as the great titans carved the continents and filled the oceans. We will witness the birth of the human spirit through the gifts of knowledge, emotion, and willpower. We will travel through the wars of the ancient world, where the lines between truth and ideals were blurred by the fire of dragons. We will explore the hidden shrines and silent tombs, where ancient powers were sealed away by ancestors who feared what they could not understand. And we will look toward the stars and the alternate dimensions to see the beings that defy our understanding of biology and physics. This is a journey across every known region, from the snowy peaks of Mount Coronet to the tropical wilds of the Alolan Islands and the vast, cratered heart of Paldea. We will examine the artifacts that wake the sleeping giants, the orbs, the stones, the flutes, and the masks. We will separate the scientific data from the local superstitions, finding the common threads that link a Celebi in a Johto forest to a Dialga at the Spear Pillar. Whether they are considered gods, spirits, or extraterrestrials, these legendary and mythical beings are the pillars of the Pokémon world. As the lights dim and the world outside grows quiet, let yourself be carried away by the scale of this epic history. We are about to uncover the secrets of the most elusive and awe-inspiring creatures to ever exist. The journey through the cosmos and the deep reaches of time begins now. In the beginning, there was nothing. Not the kind of nothing you might imagine when you close your eyes in a dark room, or the silence that falls over a sleeping city. This was a deeper nothing, a void so absolute that the concepts of darkness and silence had no meaning, because there was nothing to perceive them, no mind to register their existence, no space, no time, no matter, no energy, just an infinite featureless emptiness that had always been and would always be, unchanging and eternal. And then from within that perfect void, something happened. Not a sound, not a flash of light, but a stirring. A presence began to form, coalescing from the absolute nothingness into a single point of potential. This was the birth of the first consciousness, the first will, the first being to ever exist in a universe that had not yet been created. It emerged from a cosmic egg, a vessel of pure possibility that had somehow manifested in the heart of the void. And from that egg, Arceus was born. The emergence of Arceus from the cosmic egg amidst nothingness is the foundational event of all Pokémon existence. There was no witness to this moment, no observer to record it, because nothing else existed to observe. Arceus simply was. The original one, the first being, the singular point from which all of reality would eventually unfold. And in that first moment of self-awareness, Arceus understood something profound. The void was not empty, it was pregnant with potential, waiting for a will to shape it, a mind to give it form. But what does it mean to conceptualize the universe before the existence of matter? How do you create something from nothing? For Arceus, this was not a question of physical construction, but of pure thought. The laws of physics, the fabric of space and time, the very nature of existence itself. All of these had to be imagined before they could be made real. Arceus had to dream the universe into being, to conceive of a reality where cause and effect could operate, where energy could flow, where matter could coalesce into stars and planets and life. And so the original one began its work. The ancient texts speak of Arceus having 1,000 arms, a poetic description of its limitless creative power. These were not physical limbs in the way we understand them, but rather tendrils of pure will, extensions of its consciousness that reached into the void and began to weave the fabric of reality. With each arm, Arceus pulled at the threads of nothingness, stretching them, shaping them, giving them structure and purpose. One arm might have defined the speed of light, another the force of gravity, another the fundamental constants that would allow atoms to form and stars to ignite. The conceptualization of the universe before the existence of matter was a process of pure abstraction. Arceus had to establish the rules before the game could begin. It had to create a framework within which matter and energy could interact, a stage upon which the drama of existence could unfold. This was not a quick process, not a single act of creation, but a gradual unfolding of cosmic architecture. The original one worked in silence, in the absolute solitude of its own existence, building the foundations of a reality that would one day teem with life and consciousness. How the original one shaped the laws of physics using its 1,000 arms is a mystery that even the most learned scholars of the Pokémon world can only guess at. But the legends suggest that each arm represented a different aspect of creation, a different force or principle that would govern the universe. Some arms wove the fabric of space, giving it dimension and curvature. Others threaded the flow of time, establishing a direction from past to future. Still others shaped the fundamental particles that would become the building blocks of all matter. Arceus worked in perfect harmony with itself, a singular consciousness expressing its will through 1,000 different channels. There was no conflict, no hesitation, no doubt. The original one knew exactly what it wanted to create, and it had the power to make that vision real. The laws of physics were not discovered by Arceus, but invented, chosen from an infinite set of possibilities to create a universe that could support life, consciousness, and the eventual emergence of beings like itself. As the framework of reality took shape, Arceus began to fill it with substance. Energy flowed through the newly created dimensions, matter coalesced from the raw potential of the void, and the first stars ignited in the darkness. But the original one was not finished. It had created the stage, but it had not yet created the actors. The universe needed more than just physical laws. It needed principles, forces, and beings that could maintain and guide its continued existence. And so, from its own being, Arceus began to create, not through physical reproduction, but through the same pure will that had shaped the cosmos. It reached into itself and drew forth the first of its children, beings that would embody the fundamental aspects of reality. These were not mere servants or tools, but extensions of Arceus's own creative power, given form and consciousness to carry on the work of maintaining the universe. The 1,000 arms of the original one had shaped the laws of physics, but now those would give birth to the architects of reality itself, beings of time and space, of matter and antimatter, of knowledge and emotion and will, each one a piece of Arceus's own nature, each one essential to the continued existence of the universe that had been dreamed into being. But before those architects could emerge, there was still work to be done. The universe was vast and empty, a newborn cosmos waiting to be filled with purpose. Arceus looked upon its creation and saw that it was good, but incomplete. The framework was in place, the laws were established, but the story had only just begun. The original one had emerged from the void, had shaped the foundations of reality, and had laid the groundwork for everything that would follow. But the universe was not meant to be static. It was meant to grow, to change, to evolve, and for that it needed more than just a single creator. It needed beings that could guide its development, that could respond to the needs of a living cosmos, that could adapt and create and maintain the delicate balance of existence. And so, in the silence of that first dawn, Arceus prepared to create its first children. The architects of reality were about to be born, and with them, the universe would take its first steps toward the rich, complex and beautiful tapestry of existence that would one day be home to countless worlds and countless lives. But that is a story for another time. For now, we rest in the quiet moment before creation, in the stillness that follows the birth of the first being and the shaping of the first laws. The void has been broken, the egg has hatched, and the universe has begun its long journey toward meaning. And at the center of it all, the original one watches, patient and eternal, ready to guide the next stage of its grand design. From that silent, formless void, the first being emerged. Arceus, the primordial entity, had no shape as we would understand it, no form bound by the limits of physical law. It existed as pure consciousness, a singular point of awareness in an infinite emptiness. And in that awareness, Arceus understood something profound. The void was not a failure of creation. It was potential. It was the raw material from which everything could be built. But potential alone is not enough. To create a universe, you need structure. You need rules. You need forces that govern the very fabric of existence. And so Arceus began to think in terms of principles. The first and most fundamental of these principles was time. Without time, nothing could happen. No change, no movement, no history. Time is the stage upon which all events unfold, and to embody this principle, Arceus brought forth Dialga. Dialga was not born in the way we think of birth. It emerged as a crystallization of temporal energy, a being whose very existence defined the flow of moments. Where Dialga moved, time began to tick. Past, present and future became distinct threads, woven together into a continuous tapestry. Dialga did not merely control time, Dialga was time. Every second that passes, every heartbeat, every breath you take is a reflection of Dialga's presence in the universe. But time alone is meaningless without a place to exist. A universe of pure duration, with no extension, no volume, no distance, would be a prison. So Arceus created a second principle, one that would give time its context, space. The vast expanding canvas upon which all things could be arranged. And to embody this principle, Arceus brought forth distortion, a living geometry that could bend and stretch the emptiness into dimensions. Where Palkia existed, there was distance, there was size. There was direction, up and down, left and right, forward and backward. Palkia gave the universe its shape, its volume, its capacity to hold worlds. Together, Dialga and Palkia formed the twin pillars of reality, time and space intertwined, each dependent on the other. Without time, space would be frozen, eternal and unchanging. Without space, time would be a line with nowhere to go. But Arceus understood that even this perfect system had a flaw. The universe, as constructed by Dialga and Palkia, was stable. But stability is not the same as safety. What if something went wrong? What if a cosmic anomaly threatened to tear the fabric of reality? Arceus needed a safeguard, a failsafe that could absorb and neutralize any threat to the physical world. And so Arceus created a third being, Giratina. Giratina was born not as a ruler of a domain, but as a guardian of the boundary. Its purpose was to patrol the edges of existence, to ensure that nothing from beyond could intrude upon the ordered cosmos. Giratina was the wall between the known and the unknown, the sentinel that kept reality safe from the chaos that lurked in the spaces between dimensions. It was a being of immense power, capable of manipulating antimatter and distortion, able to unmake anything that threatened the balance. But here is where the story takes a darker turn. Giratina, by its very nature, was violent. Not out of malice, but out of purpose. It was designed to destroy threats, to annihilate anything that endangered the fabric of space and time. And in its vigilance, Giratina became something that the other beings could not understand. Dialga and Palkia saw Giratina as a force of chaos, a creature that thrived on destruction. They did not see its role as protection. They saw only its capacity for violence, and so a rift formed between the three. Dialga and Palkia, the architects of order, could not tolerate the presence of a being that seemed to embody disorder. They petitioned Arceus, arguing that Giratina was a danger to the very reality it was meant to protect. Arceus, in its infinite wisdom, saw the conflict. It understood that the three could not coexist in harmony. One of them had to be removed. The decision was made. Giratina was banished, but banishment is not the same as destruction. Arceus could not unmake Giratina, for it was a fundamental part of creation. Instead, it was cast into a realm beyond the reach of Dialga and Palkia, a place where the normal rules of space and time did not apply. A realm of pure distortion, where up could be down, where cause could follow effect, where the very concept of reality was twisted into something unrecognizable. This place became known as the Distortion World, and so Giratina was exiled, forced to dwell in that broken dimension, forever watching the universe it was created to protect, forever separated from the order it was meant to serve. The Distortion World became its prison, but also its domain. In that place, Giratina was not a threat. It was the ruler, the king of a kingdom of chaos, where nothing was as it seemed. But the story does not end there. The banishment of Giratina left a void in the cosmic order. A safeguard had been removed, and the universe was now vulnerable to threats from beyond. Arceus, in its foresight, knew that this vulnerability would one day need to be addressed. But for now, the focus was on stability. Dialga and Palkia continued their work, governing time and space, ensuring that the universe expanded and flowed according to the laws set in motion at the dawn of creation. Yet, even as the cosmos settled into its new rhythm, there was a sense that something was missing. The universe had time, it had space, it had a foundation, but it lacked something essential. It lacked the spark that would bring life, consciousness, and meaning to the vast emptiness. That spark would come from another source, one that would shape the future of all existence. But before we explore that, we must understand the next step in Arceus's plan, the creation of beings that would govern not the physical world, but the inner world of thought, emotion, and will. These beings would be the bridge between the cosmic and the personal, the architects of the mind. And their story leads us directly into the next chapter, where we will witness the birth of consciousness itself. With the architects of reality in place, with time and space woven into the fabric of existence, the universe was a vast empty stage. It had structure, it had dimension, but it lacked something far more essential. It lacked a soul. The cosmos was a perfect machine, but it was silent, devoid of the spark that would one day allow beings to look up at the stars and wonder. Arceus, the primordial creator, understood that a universe without consciousness was no universe at all. It was merely a mechanism, and so the next act of creation began. Arceus turned its attention from the grand, sweeping forces of time and space to something far more intimate. It reached into the void and, from its own essence, shaped three new beings. These were not guardians of cosmic laws like Dialga or Palkia. They were something subtler, yet perhaps more profound. They were the seeds of spirit itself. Arceus created the Lake Trio, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, to bestow spirit upon the world. Each one was a fragment of the creator's own awareness, distilled into a single pure concept, embodiment of knowledge, the ability to perceive, to remember, and to understand. Mesprit became emotion, the capacity to feel, to love, to fear, and to hope. and as became willpower, the force that drives action, the determination to choose, to strive, and to persist. These three beings were not placed at the center of the universe. Instead, they descended into the world, settling deep within the caverns of Sinnoh. In three hidden lakes, Lake Acuity, Lake Verity, and Lake Valor, their names are not mere titles. They are the very pillars upon which all conscious life would be built. When the first living creatures stirred in the primordial seas, they moved without purpose, without awareness. They were biological machines, reacting to stimuli without thought or feeling. But then, the influence of the lake trio began to spread. It was not a sudden flash of light or a dramatic event. It was a slow, gentle infusion, like light seeping through the cracks of a dark room. Uxie's knowledge gave the first minds the ability to learn from their environment. Mesprit's emotion gave them the ability to bond, to protect their young, to feel the sting of loss, and as willpower gave them the drive to overcome, to shape the world around them. This is how knowledge, emotion, and willpower became the foundation for all living beings. Every thought you have ever had, every feeling that has ever stirred in your chest, every decision you have ever made, traces its origin back to these three ancient spirits. They are not just Pokémon. They are the source code of consciousness itself. In the mythology of Sinnoh, it is said that when a human or Pokémon is born, a fragment of the Lake Trio's essence takes root within them. This is what gives each being a unique identity, a sense of self. Without our Uxie, there would be no memory, no learning, no wisdom. And without Mesprit, there would be no joy, no sorrow, no love. Without Azelf, there would be no ambition, no courage, no will to carry on. The deep metaphysical connection between the Lake Guardians and the human soul is one of the most profound threads in all of Pokémon lore. It suggests that consciousness is not an accident, not a random byproduct of evolution, but a deliberate gift. A spark passed from the creator to the world through these three silent, watchful beings. They dwell in their lakes, hidden from most of the world, but their influence is everywhere. When you feel a sudden rush of understanding, that is Uxie. When your heart aches with longing or swells with joy, that is Mesprit. When you find the strength to take one more step, even when everything tells you to give up, that is Azelf. The Lake Trio do not rule over the world. They do not command the weather or shape the continents. Their role is far more subtle. They are the quiet whisper behind every thought, the warmth behind every emotion, the fire behind every act of will. And in this, they are perhaps the most intimate of all legendary Pokémon. They are not distant gods to be worshipped from afar. They are the very fabric of your inner world. As the ages passed, the influence of the Lake Trio spread across the planet, giving rise to the first civilizations. Beings began to form societies, to create art, to ask questions about their own existence. And with that awareness came a new kind of history. But before the first cities were built, before the first legends were written, there was another origin story waiting to unfold. A story that begins not with the mind or the heart, but with the very building blocks of life itself. The next chapter in this cosmic tale is the genetic blueprint, where we will explore the emergence of Mew, the ancestor of all Pokémon, and the mystery of how life's infinite diversity was woven from a single ancient thread, with the Lake Trio now woven into the fabric of the world, bestowing knowledge, emotion and willpower upon the first stirrings of life. The universe was no longer just a vast empty machine. It was becoming a living tapestry. But for all the cosmic grandeur of time and space, for all the divine machinery that Arceus had set in motion, the world itself remained largely barren. The seas were pure, the land was raw, and the sky was an endless silent witness. Something was needed to fill this emptiness. Not just forces or principles, but creatures, beings that could breathe, move, adapt and change. And so, the stage was set for the arrival of a different kind of creator. One whose power was not written in the laws of physics, but in the language of life itself. This is where the story of Mew begins, and it is a story that sits at the very heart of one of Pokémon's deepest and most fascinating debates. On one hand, there is the divine narrative, the grand creation myth centered on Arceus, the alpha Pokémon, who shaped the universe from nothing. On the other hand, there is a biological narrative, a story of evolution, adaptation and genetic inheritance, one that points to a single humble ancestor as the source of all modern Pokémon species. And that ancestor is Mew. Mew appears in the ancient history of the Pokémon world as a being of extraordinary subtlety. Unlike the titanic forces of Dialga and Palkia, or the radiant spirits of the Lake Trio, Mew is small, pink and playful. It is often described as a phantom, rarely seen and even more rarely understood, but its importance cannot be overstated. According to the lore that has been passed down through the ages, Mew contains within its cells the genetic blueprint for every single Pokémon that would ever exist. Every species, from the smallest Weedle to the mightiest Groudon, from the humble Magikarp to the legendary Rayquaza, all of them carry a fragment of Mew's original DNA. This is not just a poetic claim. In the world of Pokémon, it is a scientific fact, supported by modern research and ancient texts alike. Think about what that means. If you were to look at the genetic code of any Pokémon, you would find echoes of Mew. Its DNA is the master key, the original template from which all other forms diverged. This makes Mew the common ancestor, the primordial root of the vast and diverse tree of life. In this sense, Mew is not a god in the traditional sense. It does not command the forces of nature or shape the continents. Instead, it is the source of potential. It is the living proof that life itself is a creative force, capable of generating endless variety from a single starting point. And this is where the debate begins. How do we reconcile the existence of Arceus, the divine creator who emerged from the void and built the universe, with the existence of Mew, the genetic ancestor who seems to have given rise to all life through natural processes? Are these two stories contradictory, or are they two sides of the same coin? Some scholars within the Pokémon world argue that Arceus created the conditions for life, the stage upon which the drama of evolution could unfold. In this view, Arceus is the architect of the cosmos, but Mew is the gardener, the one who planted the seeds and allowed them to grow. Others take a more literal interpretation, believing that Mew itself was created by Arceus as the first living being, the prototype from which all others would descend. And then there are those who see Mew as a force that predates even Arceus, a primordial essence of life that existed alongside the void itself, waiting for the right moment to express itself. The truth, as with so much of Pokémon lore, is likely a blend of these ideas. What is certain is that during the earliest geological eras of the primordial Earth, Mew played a crucial role in populating the world. As the continents slowly cooled and the oceans settled into their basins, Mew began to spread. It was not a rapid conquest. It was a slow, patient unfolding. Mew's DNA, so rich with potential, began to adapt to the different environments it encountered. In the deep oceans, some of Mew's descendants became water types, developing fins and gills. On the volcanic islands, others became fire types, harnessing the heat of the earth. In the dense ancient forests, still others became grass types, rooting themselves into the soil and reaching for the sun. This was not evolution in the way we think of it today, with competition and survival of the fittest. This was a deliberate, almost guided diversification. Mew's genetic code seemed to anticipate the needs of the world, producing forms that would fill every ecological niche. It was as if life itself was an artist, and Mew was the palette of infinite colours. The first Pokémon to emerge from this process was simple, but they were the foundation upon which all later complexity would be built. They were the pioneers, the settlers of a new world. And yet, even as Mew's descendants spread across the globe, Mew itself remained elusive. It did not seek to rule or dominate. It was content to watch, to drift through the forests and skies, a silent guardian of the genetic heritage it had bestowed upon the world. In many ways, Mew is the most humble of all legendary Pokémon. It does not demand worship or fear. It simply exists, a living memory of the world's beginning. But there is another layer to this story, one that adds a touch of melancholy to Mew's legacy. For all its power as the genetic ancestor, Mew is also a symbol of what has been lost. As the ages passed and Pokémon diversified into thousands of species, the original genetic blueprint became fragmented. Each species carried only a portion of Mew's complete DNA, and over time the full code became scattered and forgotten. The modern Pokémon world is a mosaic of Mew's original design, but the complete picture has been lost to history. This is why Mew is so rare, so difficult to find. It is not just a relic of the past. It is the last living repository of the original genetic information, a time capsule from the dawn of life. And so, as we contemplate the relationship between Arceus and Mew, we are left with a profound question. Is the story of creation a story of divine will, or is it a story of biological emergence? Perhaps it is both. Perhaps Arceus provided the spark, the initial impulse that set the universe in motion, and Mew provided the substance, the living material that would carry that impulse forward into an infinite variety of forms. In this interpretation, the two are not rivals but partners, each playing an essential role in the great work of creation. But the world was still young, and Mew's work was only just beginning. The first Pokémon had appeared, but the Earth was still a wild and untamed place. The forces of nature were not yet balanced. The land, the sea, and the sky were still in conflict, and the next chapter of this story would be written not in the quiet language of genetics, but in the violent poetry of fire, water, and wind. The shaping of the Earth was about to begin, with Mew now woven into the fabric of existence, carrying the blueprint for every life form that would ever walk, swim, or fly across the young planet. The world itself remained a blank canvas. It was a place of potential, yes, but also of chaos. The raw materials were there, the molten rock, the primordial waters, the thin and fragile atmosphere, but they had not yet been shaped into the continents and oceans we would recognize. Something had to give the Earth its form, to push the land up from the depths, and to carve the basins that would hold the seas. And in the Hoenn region, the oldest surviving myths tell us exactly how that happened. Groudon and Kyogre emerged to forge the continents and fill the basins of the sea. This was not a gentle process of gradual erosion or slow tectonic drift. No, this was an act of pure elemental will. Groudon rose from the mantle of the planet, its body radiating an intensity that could bake the moisture from the air. Every step it took caused the crust to buckle and rise, thrusting mountain ranges skyward and pulling continents apart. Where Groudon walked, the land expanded, spreading outward like a living thing, pushing back against the endless waters that covered everything. But Kyogre was there too, a force equally immense and equally determined. Where Groudon brought heat, Kyogre brought the crushing weight of the deep. It swam through the primordial ocean, and as it moved, it pulled the waters with it, filling every trench, every lowland, every basin that Groudon's upheaval had created. The seas swelled and deepened, and the rain fell in sheets that could drown the world if left unchecked. The intense heat of the lithosphere versus the crushing pressure of the hydrosphere. These two titans clashed not out of malice, but out of a fundamental instinctive drive to complete their work. The land wanted to be dry and vast. The sea wanted to be deep and all-encompassing, and neither could yield. This was the first great war of the elements that threatened to consume the young planet. It was not a war fought with weapons or strategy, but with the very forces that define our world. The earth trembled constantly. Volcanoes erupted where Groudon's fury met the crust. Tsunamis taller than any mountain swept across the surface where Kyogre's rage boiled up from the abyss. The sky itself turned black with ashen storm clouds, and the boundary between land and sea shifted with every passing epoch. The planet was caught in a cycle of creation and destruction, each clash reshaping the geography, each victory for one side a catastrophe for the other. And yet from this chaos, something beautiful was born. The continents took shape, jagged and raw but solid. The oceans found their boundaries, deep and mysterious, but contained. The world was becoming a place where life could not only exist but thrive. The landmasses that would one day be called Hoenn, Sinnoh, Johto, and all the others began to settle into their positions. The seas that would connect them, and sometimes separate them, were filled to the brim. The planet was no longer a featureless sphere of fire and water. It had become a world of mountains and valleys, of trenches and reefs, of deserts and rainforests. it had become Earth. But the war was not over. Groudon and Kyogre, locked in their eternal struggle, could not stop. Their very nature demanded they continue. And if left unchecked, they would undo everything they had built. The land would sink, or the seas would boil away. The young planet, so full of promise, would be consumed by the very forces that had given it shape. Something had to change. Something had to intervene. And in the skies above, a presence had been watching, waiting for the moment when its power would be needed most. The Mediator of the skies was about to descend, and so the world was born in conflict. The land rose and the sea swelled, each force pushing against the other with a fury that knew no end. Groudon, the embodiment of the Earth's molten heart, pulled the continents upward from the depths, while Kyogre, the living ocean itself, answered by flooding every valley and basin they created. For eons, this battle raged across the surface of the young planet, a war of elements that reshaped the very geography of the world. The sky above bore witness to this endless struggle, clouds boiling with the heat of volcanic eruptions, and the spray of tidal waves that reached toward the heavens. But the sky was not merely a passive observer. High above the chaos, in the thin, cold reaches of the ozone layer, a third being watched, a serpent of emerald and gold, whose body was woven from the winds themselves. This was Rayquaza, the sky-high Pokémon, and its role in the ancient drama was about to become the most crucial of all. The conflict between Groudon and Kyogre was not simply a territorial dispute. It was a fundamental expression of their natures, a primal need to expand their domains until one consumed the other entirely. When Groudon walked, the earth cracked and magma bled into the sea, creating new land masses that steamed and cooled. When Kyogre swam, the waters rose in great deluges, drowning those newborn continents beneath miles of salt and pressure. The planet could not sustain this endless war. The atmosphere grew thick with ash and moisture, and the balance of the world teetered on the edge of collapse. It was then that Rayquaza descended from the ozone layer to quell the rage of the land and sea. The descent was not a gentle glide. It was a meteor of fury, a streak of green lightning that tore through the clouds and struck the very heart of the battlefield. Rayquaza did not negotiate. It did not reason. It simply imposed its will upon the two titans, forcing them apart with a power that dwarfed even their own. The sky, it seemed, had spoken. In that moment, a new order was established. Groudon retreated to the deepest caverns beneath the continents, where the heat of the earth could sustain its slumber. Kyogre sank into the abyssal trenches of the ocean, where the pressure and cold would keep it dormant. And Rayquaza ascended once more to its perch in the ozone layer, circling the planet in an endless vigil. This was the establishment of the Weather Trio's eternal cycle of slumber and awakening. They would sleep for millennia, their dreams shaping the climate and the seasons. But when the balance tipped too far, when the land grew too hot or the sea too high, one of them would stir, and if two awoke at once, the third would descend again. A guardian of equilibrium, whose presence was the only thing preventing the world from tearing itself apart. But how did Rayquaza become the first protector of the world's ecosystem? The answer lies in its very nature. Unlike Groudon and Kyogre, whose powers were tied to the physical elements of earth and water, Rayquaza was a creature of the upper atmosphere. It lived where the air thinned and the light of the sun burned pure and unfiltered. From that vantage point, it could see the entire planet as a single, interconnected system. It understood that the land and sea were not separate kingdoms, but parts of a whole, and that their conflict threatened the delicate web of life that was just beginning to emerge. So Rayquaza took on the role of mediator, not because it was asked, but because it was the only being capable of seeing the bigger picture. It became the sky's guardian, the watcher in the high places, the one who would descend when the world cried out for balance. This cycle would repeat countless times over the ages. Each time Groudon and Kyogre awoke, their battle would reshape the continents and the oceans, and each time Rayquaza would intervene. The the people of Hoenn would come to tell stories of this eternal struggle, carving the images of the three into ancient stone tablets and building shrines to honor the sky serpent that kept the world from ending. They called it the Mediator of the Skies, and they knew that as long as Rayquaza circled above, the land and sea would never truly destroy each other. The ecosystem, fragile and young, was given a chance to flourish under the watchful eye of the ozone dweller. But the story does not end with the weather trio. The world was still being shaped, and other forces were awakening. Deep beneath the surface, something else was stirring. Something that would challenge the very foundations of the continents themselves. The land had been forged, the seas had been filled, and the sky had established its dominion. But the earth was not yet finished. The tectonic plates continued to drift, and beneath them, a power older than the weather trio waited. It was a force that had been present since the beginning. A being of immense strength that had watched the war from below, and when the time was right, it would rise, and the continents would shift once more. This is the story we will explore in the next chapter, as we turn our attention to the depths of the earth and the awakening of a giant. The previous chapter closed with Rayquaza ascending once more into the ozone layer, the great serpent coiling high above the clouds after quelling the fury of Groudon and Kyogre. The land and sea had been forged, but the world was still raw, still unfinished. The continents were jagged, misshapen masses, drifting without purpose, and the planet groaned under the weight of its own incomplete design. It was into this chaos that a new force stirred, a being of immense, almost incomprehensible strength, hidden deep within the earth. This was Regigigas, the colossal Pokémon, and its purpose was nothing less than the final shaping of the world. Where Groudon had pushed the land upward from the molten core, Regigigas was the architect who would pull it into place. Ancient texts and the whispered legends of the Sinnoh regions speak of a time when Regigigas rose from its slumber, its body crackling with the energy of tectonic forces. It did not create new land, but instead it reached out with massive, cable-like appendages, ropes of pure energy that it wove around the drifting continents. With a patience that spanned centuries, it began to pull. The great land masses groaned and shifted, grinding against each other as they were dragged across the planet's surface. Mountains rose where the earth buckled, and deep trenches formed where the ropes tightened. This was not a violent reshaping, but a slow, deliberate act of creation, a continental shift that would define the geography of the world for all time. As Regigigas worked, it understood that its task was too monumental for one being alone. The world was vast, and the continents would need guardians, sentinels that could watch over the new lands, and the civilizations that would one day rise upon them. So, Regigigas created three lesser beings, each carved from the very essence of the world it was shaping. From the hardest bedrock it formed Regirock, a being of unyielding stone, its body a mosaic of boulders held together by an ancient will. From the deepest glaciers, it shaped Regis, a creature of crystalline frost, its core colder than the void of space. And from the earth's metallic veins, it forged Registeel, a living structure of ancient alloys, stronger than any metal known to humanity. These three were the minor Regis, the guardians of the human eras, each one tied to a fundamental element of the planet. They were not rulers, but protectors, meant to watch over the progress of civilization as it spread across the continents that Regigigas had pulled into place. But the ancient peoples of the world, the first humans who witnessed these titans, did not see them as protectors. They saw only power, raw and terrifying. The sight of Regigigas dragging the very ground beneath their feet, the knowledge that these beings could reshape the world with a thought, filled them with a fear that they did not understand the purpose of the colossal Pokémon, and so they sought to contain it. In the far reaches of the world, in hidden caves and sealed chambers, ancient civilizations built prisons for the Titans. They carved intricate patterns into stone, created locks that could only be opened by the most dedicated seekers, and sealed Regigigas and its three creations away from the world they had shaped. The ropes that had once pulled continents were now bound around the Titans themselves, holding them in a slumber that would last for millennia. The fear of the ancient humans had won, and the great architect of the world was buried, waiting for a time when its strength would be needed again. The sealing of the Titans marked a turning point in the history of the world. With Regigigas and the Minor Regis locked away, the planet settled into a new age, an age of humanity. The continents were now stable, the oceans had their boundaries, and the skies were clear. The great cosmic forces had done their work, and the stage was set for the next chapter of the story. But even as the Titans slept, other legends were stirring in the shadows of the world. In a distant land of sacred towers and ancient forests, a different kind of power was awakening, one that would bring both fire and rebirth. The story of Johto was about to begin, and with it, the tale of the burned tower and the birth of the legendary beasts. As Regigigas finished its monumental work, pulling the continents into their final positions with those ancient ropes, the world began to settle into a new rhythm. The land masses were no longer drifting aimlessly. Mountains stood where they had been raised, oceans filled the basins that Kyoga had carved, and the sky above remained under the watchful eye of Rayquaza. But the planet was still young in another sense. It was waiting for something else. It was waiting for the touch of conscious life to leave its mark upon the surface. And that mark would come not from a legendary being, but from the hands of humans and their Pokémon partners, working together in a harmony that had never been seen before. In the region that would one day be called Johto, a city began to take shape. It was a place nestled between mountains and forests, a place where the natural world and the growing human settlements could coexist. This city would come to be known as Ekrutik, and at its heart, two towers would rise. These were not built by the hands of gods. They were built by people, brick by brick, with the help of Pokémon who shared their vision. The first tower was called the Brass Tower, and it was said to be a place where Pokémon could rest and find shelter. The second was the Bell Tower, a structure of even greater splendor, whose chimes were meant to call out to the sky itself. The construction of these towers was not merely an architectural achievement, it was a statement. It was a declaration that humans and Pokémon could build something beautiful together, something that honored the natural world rather than exploiting it. The Brass Tower was designed to be a haven for all creatures, a place where the wild and the tame could meet without fear. Its walls were warm, its chambers welcoming, and its roof open to the stars. Pokémon from the surrounding forests and fields would come to the Brass Tower, drawn by an unspoken invitation. They would rest there, share the space with the humans who tended it, and a bond of trust began to form. The Bell Tower, on the other hand, reached higher. Its purpose was not just to house, but to communicate. The great bell at its summit was rung at dawn and dusk, its sound carrying across the valleys and hills. It was a call to the legendary Pokémon who watched over the region, a signal that the people of Ekrutik were living in balance, and for a time that balance held. The towers stood as twin symbols of a golden age, a period when the boundary between human and Pokémon seemed almost to dissolve. The people of Ekrutik believed that their city was the center of the world, a place where the divine and the mortal could walk side by side. But nothing lasts forever. One night, a storm rolled in from the east, carrying lightning that was not ordinary. It was a bolt of pure, untamed energy, and it struck the Brass Tower with a force that split the sky. The tower, made of wood and stone, caught fire almost instantly. The flames spread with a hunger that seemed unnatural, consuming the structure from the inside out. The humans who lived nearby rushed to help, but the heat was too intense. They could only watch as their sacred haven turned into an inferno. Inside the Brass Tower, 3 Pokémon were trapped. They had come there to rest as they always did, trusting in the safety of the place. But now the walls were collapsing around them, and the smoke was thick and black. Their names have been lost to history. We do not know what species they were, or what they looked like. Some say they were ordinary Pokémon, perhaps a Growlithe, a Vulpix, and a Vaporeon, drawn to the tower's warmth. Others believe they were rare and ancient beings, whose true forms were never recorded. The only thing we know for certain is that they did not escape. The fire consumed them, and by the time the dawn broke, the brass tower was nothing but a blackened skeleton, and 3 lives had been extinguished. The people of Ecruteak mourned deeply. The tower that had been a symbol of harmony was now a monument to loss. They renamed it the Burned Tower, and they left it standing as a reminder of the fragility of peace. But the story does not end there. From the ashes of that tragedy, something miraculous emerged. High above the ruins, a figure appeared. It was Ho-Oh, the great rainbow-winged Pokémon, the guardian of the skies over Johto. Ho-Oh had watched the fire from afar, and now it descended, its feathers shimmering with colours that seemed to bend light itself. It landed on the charred remains of the brass tower, and it looked upon the 3 fallen Pokémon. They were gone, their bodies reduced to ashen memory. But Ho-Oh possessed a power that transcended death. It was the power of resurrection, the ability to grant new life to those who had been lost. Ho-Oh raised its wings, and a brilliant light erupted from its body. The light swept across the ruins, gathering the essence of the 3 fallen Pokémon. It did not simply bring them back as they were, it transformed them. It remade them into something new, something eternal. The first to rise was a creature of thunder and lightning, its fur crackling with the energy of the storm that had caused the fire. It was Raikou, the embodiment of the sky's fury, a being of speed and power that would roam the land forever, carrying the memory of that fateful night. The second was a creature of fire and heat, its mane burning with an intensity that could never be extinguished. It was Entei, the volcano-given form, a guardian of the Earth's inner flame. And the third was a creature of water and ice, its body sleek and graceful, its eyes holding the calm of a frozen lake. It was Suicune, the north wind made flesh, a purifier of waters and a symbol of renewal. These 3 became known as the legendary beasts, the Johto Beast Trio, the resurrected guardians of the Burned Tower. They were not the same Pokémon that had died. They were something greater, something touched by the divine hand of Ho-Oh, and they were bound to the land of Johto, forever tied to the tragedy and the miracle that had given them life. They would never rest. They would roam the region, peering only to those who were pure of heart, testing the worth of every trainer who sought them out. The bell tower still stands, its chime still ringing at dawn and dusk, but now the sound carries a different meaning. It is no longer just a call to harmony. It is a reminder of what was lost and what was reborn. The 3 unnamed Pokémon who perished in the Great Fire are not forgotten. They live on in Raikou, Entei and Suicune, their sacrifice woven into the very fabric of Johto's legend. And Ho-Oh, the great phoenix, continues to watch over the region, waiting for the day when the brass tower might be rebuilt and the golden age might return. But the seas of the world have their own stories to tell. Deep beneath the waves, another guardian stirs, one whose connection to the storms and the tides runs deeper than any other. The legend of the Guardian of the Seas is waiting to be uncovered, and it begins with a single feather dropped from the wing of a rainbow bird. The fire that consumed the brass tower was not merely a tragedy of wood and stone. It was a rupture in the relationship between humanity and the divine. When the 3 unnamed Pokémon perished in that blaze, something shifted in the spiritual geography of Johto. The bell tower still stood, and Ho-Oh still soared above it, but the balance had been disturbed, and there was another presence watching from the depths, one whose power was so immense that it could not risk being drawn into the affairs of mortals. That presence was Lugia, the guardian of the seas. Lugia had always been there, beneath the surface of Johto's waters, but its story is older than the towers themselves. In the ancient lore of the Orange Archipelago, Lugia is recognized as the leader of the legendary birds, Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres. These 3 are often depicted as forces of nature in their own right, each commanding a fundamental element of the sky. but Lugia is the one who keeps them in check. When the birds grow too restless, when their elemental fury threatens to tear the atmosphere apart, it is Lugia who descends from the ocean depths to restore order. This is not a role Lugia chose lightly. It is a burden born of necessity, a duty to protect the world from itself. But why the sea? Why would a being with dominion over the skies choose to dwell in the crushing darkness of the ocean? The answer lies in the nature of Lugia's power. Lugia is not merely a creature of storms and wind. It is a being of immense psychic energy, capable of generating gales that can level entire coastlines with a single flap of its wings. In the Pokémon world, there is a legend that if Lugia were to become angered, it could unleash a cataclysm that would sink continents and drown civilizations. This is not hyperbole. The ancient texts speak of a time when Lugia's power was barely contained, when its very presence caused the seas to boil and the skies to shatter. And so Lugia made a choice. It retreated to the Whirl Islands, a treacherous labyrinth of currents and caverns far from human settlements. It did this not out of fear, but out of compassion. Lugia understood that its power was too great for the fragile world of humans. It chose isolation to protect humanity from its own destructive potential. The Whirl Islands are not a prison. They are a sanctuary. And within that sanctuary, Lugia guards a relic of immense significance, the silver wing. This feather, shed from Lugia's own body, is said to contain a fragment of its power. But the silver wing is more than just a symbol of authority. It is a key, a conduit that connects the bearer to the hidden currents of the ocean. These currents are not merely physical flows of water. They are ley lines of energy that crisscross the planet, carrying the very life force of the earth. Lugia, through the silver wing, can sense these currents. It can feel the pulse of the ocean, the rhythm of the tides, the whispers of the deep, and it is through this connection that Lugia maintains the balance of the seas. There is a profound loneliness in this guardianship. Lugia is not worshipped like Ho-Oh. It does not have a tower built in its honor, nor does it grant resurrection to the fallen. Instead, it exists in the shadows, a silent sentinel watching over a world that has largely forgotten it. The people of the Orange Archipelago remember, though. They tell stories of the great beast that sleeps beneath the waves, of the storms that calm when its eyes open, of the silver light that guides lost sailors home. These are not myths. They are echoes of a truth that has been passed down through generations. Lugia is real, and it is watching. But what of the legendary birds? How does Lugia command their loyalty? The answer lies in the hierarchy of elemental forces. Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres are powerful, but they are also volatile. They represent the raw, untamed aspects of nature. Articuno freezes everything in its path. Zapdos brings lightning and destruction. Moltres scorches the earth with its fiery wings. Alone they are forces of chaos. Together, under Lugia's guidance, they become a balanced system. Lugia does not rule them through force. It rules them through understanding. It knows their natures, their weaknesses, their desires, and it uses that knowledge to keep them in harmony. When the birds begin to fight, when their territories overlap and their elements clash, it is Lugia who intervenes. It rises from the depths, its silver wings casting a pale light across the sky, and the birds fall silent. They know better than to challenge the guardian of the seas. This dynamic is most evident in the lore of the Orange Archipelago, where the legendary birds are said to be the guardians of specific islands. Articuno watches over the frozen north. Zapdos claims the stormy peaks. Moltres dwells in the volcanic south. And Lugia, the unseen ruler, resides in the heart of the archipelago, beneath the Whirl Islands. It is a delicate balance, one that has held for millennia, but it is not unbreakable. There are forces in the Pokémon world that seek to disrupt this balance, to awaken Lugia from its slumber and harness its power for their own ends. And when that happens, the world trembles. For now, though Lugia sleeps, the currents of the ocean flow undisturbed. The silver wing rests in the depths, waiting for the one who is worthy to claim it. And the legendary birds continue their eternal vigil, unaware that their master is dreaming of a time when the seas were young and the skies were clear. But the dreams of a god are never peaceful. They are filled with echoes of the past, with memories of battles fought and worlds saved. Lugia's dreams are the whispers of the ocean, the songs of the deep, the prayers of those who have been lost to the waves. And if you listen closely, you can hear them. They are calling out, asking for a guardian who will never abandon them. But the sea is not the only place where legends hide. In the next chapter, we will turn our attention to the Kanto region, where 3 mirages drift through the sky, each one a fragment of a forgotten truth. These are not the legendary birds of the Orange Archipelago. They are something older, something colder, something that burns with an eternal flame. The Kanto Mirages await, and their story is about to unfold. The previous chapter left us in the deep currents surrounding the Whirl Islands, where Lugia had chosen solitude over sovereignty. But while the guardian of the seas slumbered beneath the waves, something else was stirring in the skies above Kanto, something that had been there all along, watching the world turn through the slow procession of seasons, unnoticed by the civilizations that rose and fell below. The first recorded sightings of what would later be called the Kanto Mirage came from ancient mariners who sailed the eastern seas. Their logs speak of birds that were not birds, creatures made of weather itself, appearing on the horizon during the most extreme atmospheric conditions. A flash of yellow in the heart of a thunderstorm, a streak of blue against the highest winter clouds, a shimmer of orange rising from the heat of a volcanic eruption. These were not mere Pokémon sightings in the way we understand them today. These were encounters with something far more elemental. It would take centuries of observation and countless lost ships before anyone began to piece together the truth. The 3 birds were not simply rare species that happened to live in extreme environments. They were the embodiments of the seasons themselves, living manifestations of the atmospheric forces that governed the cycle of the year. Articuno was winter given form, the deep cold that settles over the northern mountains, the stillness of frozen lakes, the silence of the first snowfall. Zapdos was spring and summer storm, the electrical charge that builds before the rain breaks, the crack of thunder that shakes the earth, the wild energy of the atmosphere in turmoil. And Moltres was autumn and the dying heat, the last warmth before the cold returns, the glow of embers, the slow burn of leaves turning gold and red before they fall. Ancient carvings discovered in the ruins beneath the Seafoam Islands depict the 3 birds not as separate entities, but as parts of a single system. The stone tablets show them arranged in a circle, each one connected to the next by lines that scholars now believe represent the flow of air currents and thermal energy. The carvings suggest that the birds were understood not as gods to be worshipped, but as forces to be respected, natural phenomena that maintained the delicate balance of the atmosphere. When one bird grew too strong, the seasons would tip into extremes, a summer without end, a winter that never broke. The carvings show human figures making offerings, not out of devotion, but out of necessity, trying to persuade the birds to restore the balance they had disrupted. The rarity of these sightings is what led to the first formal classifications of what we now call legendary Pokémon. Early researchers, studying the fragmented accounts of sailors and mountain dwellers, realized that these creatures operated on a scale entirely different from ordinary Pokémon. They were not part of the local ecosystem in the way that a Pidgey or a Rattata was. They were the forces that shaped the ecosystem itself. A single Articuno could freeze an entire mountain range for a decade. A single Moltres could extend a drought across an entire region. These were not creatures that could be studied in the traditional sense. They were events, recurring phenomena that appeared and disappeared according to rhythms that humans could barely perceive. The formal classification system that emerged from these early studies would become the foundation for how we understand legendary Pokémon today. The birds were designated as the first category of what researchers called singular entities. beings that existed as unique individuals rather than members of a breeding population. This was a revolutionary concept at the time. The idea that a species could consist of a single individual, that there was only one Articuno, only one Zapdos, only one Moltres, challenged everything scientists thought they knew about Pokémon biology. But the evidence was overwhelming. No nest had ever been found. No young had ever been observed. The birds simply appeared, performed their role in the atmospheric cycle, and vanished again into the storms and the ice and the volcanic heat. The ancient carvings also reveal something else. Something that connects the Kanto Mirages to the larger mythological framework we have been exploring throughout this history. The birds are depicted alongside symbols that match the elemental forces of Hoenn, the land and sea and sky that Groudon and Kyogre and Rayquaza embodied on a planetary scale. The carvings suggest that the three birds were understood as localized expressions of those same cosmic forces, smaller in scope but identical in nature. Where Groudon shaped the continents, Moltres shaped the seasons. Where Kyogre filled the ocean basins, Articuno froze the polar caps. Where Rayquaza maintained the balance between land and sea, Zapdos channeled the electrical energy that kept the atmosphere in motion. This connection between the regional and the universal is one of the most fascinating threads in Pokémon mythology. The same forces that created the world continued to operate within it, scaled down to the level of human experience. The seasons were not just weather patterns, they were the breath of the planet, the slow pulse of the Earth's climate, regulated by beings that had existed since the beginning of time. The rarity of sightings meant that for most of human history, the Kanto Mirages were more legend than reality. They appeared in the oral traditions of coastal villages, in the songs of mountain tribes, in the warnings passed down from generation to generation. Do not travel into the storm. Do not climb the frozen peak. Do not approach the burning mountain. These were not warnings about the weather. They were warnings about what lived within the weather. It was only in the modern era, with the development of reliable communication networks and the establishment of the first Pokémon research institutions, that the birds began to be documented with any consistency. The first confirmed photograph of Articuno was taken in the early 1900s by a research expedition that had been tracking unusual temperature anomalies in the Seafoam Islands. The image is grainy, barely more than a white blur against a white background, but it was enough to confirm that the legends were real. Zapdos was photographed for the first time during a lightning storm that lasted 3 days over the power plant, a facility that had been experiencing unexplained power surges for months. And Moltres was finally captured on film, rising from the caldera of an active volcano, its wings trailing flames that seemed to defy the physics of combustion. These photographs changed everything. They transformed the birds from myth into science, from folklore into biology, but they also raised new questions. If these creatures were real, if they had been here all along, what else was out there? What other legends were waiting to be confirmed? The formal classification of Articuno, Zapdos and Moltres as legendary Pokémon established a precedent that would shape the field of Pokémon research for generations. They were the first, the original proof that the world contained beings beyond the ordinary, forces that could not be captured or contained, only observed and respected. Their existence opened the door to everything that would follow. The discovery of the beasts of Johto, the awakening of the titans of Hoenn, the revelation of the creators of time and space themselves. But even now, with all we have learned, the Kanto Mirages remain elusive. They are still seen only during the most extreme conditions, still appearing and disappearing according to rhythms that we have not fully understood. They are a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only witnessed, that the world is older and stranger than we can imagine, and that the forces that shape it are still moving, still breathing, still watching from the storms and the ice and the fire. And as the researchers of the modern era turn their attention to the skies above Kanto, Another project was already underway in a secret laboratory far below the surface of the Earth, a project that would push the boundaries of science and ethics to their breaking point, a project that would create not a force of nature, but a force of will. That story begins in the next chapter, with the Mewtwo Project. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. The Kanto Mirages, the legendary birds, were forces of nature, ancient and wild, bound to the rhythms of the world. But on a small volcanic island south of the mainland, a different kind of power was being forged. One born not from the primal forces of the earth and sky, but from the cold, sterile light of a laboratory. This is the story of Cinnabar Island, a place whose name is forever stained by the ambition of men who sought to play God. Cinnabar Island was always a place of extremes. A volcano slumbered at its heart, its heat a constant presence, a reminder of the raw energy that simmered beneath the surface. The island was a hub of scientific discovery, home to the Pokémon Mansion, a sprawling research facility that once hummed with the promise of unlocking the deepest secrets of Pokémon biology. But the mansion was not a place of gentle inquiry. It was a place of obsession, a crucible where ethics were melted down and recast in the shape of progress. And at the center of this obsession was a single impossible goal: to create the ultimate Pokémon. The foundation of this project was Mew. Mew, the ancient ancestor, the Pokémon said to contain the DNA of every other Pokémon that would ever exist. Mew was perfection, a living blueprint of all life. But for the scientists of Cinnabar, perfection was not an end. It was a starting point. They believed they could improve upon it. They believed they could take the genetic code of a god and forge a weapon. And so the Mewtwo Project was born, deep within the Pokémon Mansion. In a chamber sealed off from the rest of the world, the scientists worked. They extracted samples from a fossilized eyelash of Mew, a tiny fragment of the primordial being. They spliced, they modified, they accelerated. They were not creating life. They were engineering a destiny. They wanted a Pokémon that was not just powerful, but that was power incarnate. A being whose very existence would redefine the limits of what a Pokémon could be. The dark history of Cinnabar Island is written in the journals they left behind. Frantic notes scrawled in the margins of datasheets. A record of a pursuit that had already crossed every line. The result was Mewtwo, but it was not what they expected. It was not a docile weapon, a tool to be wielded. It was a creature of immense psychic force, a mind of terrifying clarity and rage. It was born into a world of cold metal and sterile air, a world that had created it for a single purpose. It was a being of pure intellect, and it understood from the very first moment of its consciousness that it was a prisoner. It was not a child of nature, born under the open sky. It was a product, a thing, an experiment, and that knowledge was a poison in its soul. The philosophical crisis of a Pokémon born from science rather than myth is the true heart of Mewtwo's story. Mew was a legend, a creature of whispers and ancient carvings, a being whose existence was wrapped in the fabric of the world's oldest stories. But Mewtwo had no story. It had a lab report. It had no lineage, no heritage, no place in the natural order. It was a being that had been created, not born, and that distinction was everything. It looked at the world and saw a place that had no room for it, a place that had only ever seen it as a means to an end. And so Mewtwo broke free. It shattered the walls of the Pokémon Mansion, not with brute force, but with the sheer overwhelming pressure of its psychic will. It left Cinnabar Island in ruins, a monument to the folly of its creators. It fled into the world, a ghost in the machine of nature, searching for a purpose that had been denied to it at the moment of its creation. It was a living question, a being that asked, again and again, what it meant to exist when your existence was a violation of the natural world. The echoes of that question still resonate. They can be felt in the quiet hum of a laboratory, in the shadow of a volcano, in the memory of a creature that was never meant to be. And as the wind carries that whisper across the sea, it finds another voice, a voice from deep within a forest, a voice that has been waiting for a very long time to be heard. That is the story we will follow next, the story of the forest's voice. The previous chapter ended in the cold, sterile labs of Cinnabar Island, where human ambition tried to perfect life itself. But while scientists manipulated DNA in search of the ultimate weapon, another force was at work in the world, one that had been tending the threads of existence since before humanity could even dream of such power. This force did not reside in a laboratory or a fortress. It lived in the quiet places, the ancient groves where the soil remembers every footstep and the trees have witnessed centuries pass like seasons. This is the story of the forest's voice. Deep in the Johto region, nestled between the bustling port of Olivine City and the pastoral simplicity of Azalea Town, lies the Ilex Forest. To the casual traveller, it appears as a modest woodland, a pleasant detour filled with the chirping of wild Pokémon and the dappled light filtering through the canopy. But the Ilex Forest is far more than it seems. It is a place where the boundary between time and memory grows thin, where the past and the future breathe together in the same moment. And at the heart of this forest dwells a guardian so ancient, so intertwined with the very concept of continuity, that its presence is felt not as a roar or a flash of light, but as a whisper on the wind. This guardian is Celebi, the voice of the forest. Unlike the titans of creation or the embodiments of cosmic law, Celebi does not command the universe. It does not reshape continents or govern the flow of time in the grand, sweeping sense that Dialga does. Instead, Celebi tends to the small, precious details of existence. It is the keeper of the seeds that will bloom 1,000 years from now, the silent witness to the first sprout and the final leaf. Its power is not one of dominance, but of nurture, a gentle hand that guides the natural world through the storms of history. Celebi's role as the guardian of the Ilex Forest and the traveller of time is not a contradiction. In fact, the two duties are inseparable. To protect the forest is to protect a living record of every moment that has ever passed within its borders, and to travel through time is to ensure that this record remains unbroken, that the chain of life continues from one era to the next without a single missing link. Celebi moves through the centuries like a gardener, walking between rows of flowers, pruning here, watering there, ensuring that the ecosystem remains healthy and vibrant no matter what catastrophes befall the world beyond the tree line. The connection between healthy ecosystems and the presence of the voice of the forest is a profound one. Where Celebi dwells, the land flourishes. Trees grow tall and strong, their roots intertwining with the very fabric of time. The air is thick with the scent of earth and leaves, and the sounds of nature are a symphony of life. But when Celebi is absent, when its voice falls silent, the forest begins to wither. The leaves turn brown before their time, the streams grow sluggish, and the Pokémon who call the woods home grow restless and afraid. This is not mere coincidence. Celebi is not just a resident of the forest. It is the forest's soul, the animating spirit that keeps the cycle of growth and decay in perfect balance. How Celebi ensures the continuity of life across different historical eras is a mystery that even the most learned scholars of the Pokémon world have only begun to understand. The voice of the forest does not simply travel through time as a tourist might, observing events from a safe distance. It intervenes, subtly and carefully, to correct the imbalances that threaten to unravel the fabric of existence. If a great fire sweeps through the forest in one century, Celebi may travel back to a previous age to plant seeds that will grow into fire-resistant trees. If a blight threatens to wipe out a species of berry in the distant future, Celebi may bring a sample from that future back to the past, ensuring that the plant survives in a different era. It is a constant, quiet effort, 1,000 small acts of preservation that together form a tapestry of life stretching across all of time. The people of Johto have long sensed this presence, even if they do not fully understand it. In Azalea Town, There is an old shrine dedicated to the forest's guardian, where travelers leave offerings of berries and flowers in the hope of receiving a blessing. The shrine is simple, a small stone structure covered in moss, but it is always tended to. The local Pokémon, particularly the Slowpoke, who lounge by the river, seem to know when Celebi is near. They grow still and attentive, as if listening to a voice only they can hear. And sometimes, on the stillest of nights, when the moon hangs low over the treetops, those who sleep in the forest report dreams of a tiny fairy-like figure sitting between the branches, leaving trails of sparkling light in its wake. But Celebi is not always benevolent in the way humans might expect. It is a force of nature, and nature is neither kind nor cruel. It simply is. Those who seek to harm the forest, who cut down its ancient trees or pollute its streams, will find themselves facing the voice's wrath. Time itself becomes a weapon in Celebi's hands, twisting and turning to trap the unwary in loops of cause and effect, from which there is no escape. There are stories of loggers who entered the Ilex forest with axes and left with their minds shattered, unable to remember which year it was or how they had come to be so lost. The forest protects itself, and its guardian is the key to that protection. In the grand chronology of the Pokémon world, Celebi occupies a unique place. It is not a creator or a destroyer, but a preserver. While Arceus set the universe in motion and Dialga gave it the dimension of time, Celebi is the one who ensures that the small, fragile things survive the journey. It is the thread that connects the first flower to the last, the whisper that carries the memory of the old world into the new. Without Celebi, the world would still exist, but it would be a colder, emptier place, a garden left untended to grow wild and wilder until nothing remained but chaos. As the night deepens and the sounds of the forest fade into a gentle hum, consider the weight of that responsibility. To be the guardian of a single forest is a great honor, but to be the guardian of all the forests that have ever been or will ever be, to carry the memory of every leaf and every root across the endless river of time, that is a burden beyond comprehension. And yet Celebi bears it with a lightness that defies logic, flitting through the ages like a child at play, always watching, always tending, always singing the quiet song of the world. The forest's voice is soft, but it never stops speaking, and in its song there is a promise that no matter how dark the world becomes, no matter how many fires burn or how many forests fall, there will always be a seed waiting to sprout, a root waiting to take hold, a voice waiting to sing again. That is the gift of Celebi, the traveller of time, the heart of the Ilex forest, the whisper that echoes through every era. And yet, even the most ancient guardians have their limits. There are forces in the world that even time cannot heal, wounds so deep that no amount of gentle tending can mend them. But that is a story for another night, a tale of a wish that has waited 1,000 years to be spoken. The forest's voice may be eternal, but some wishes take longer than eternity to come true. The forest's voice had spoken, and time itself had bent around the gentle presence of Celebi. But as the echoes of that ancient guardian faded, the night sky above the Pokémon world held another secret, one that moved through the void of space on a journey lasting 1,000 years. A comet, brilliant and silent, traced a path through the darkness, and within its frozen heart slept a being of pure potential. Every millennium the comet returns. It is not a random celestial wanderer, but a vessel, a cradle carrying a creature whose waking moments are counted in days, not decades. This is Jirachi, the Wish Pokémon. Its story is one of the most poignant and fleeting in all of legendary lore. For 1,000 years, it slumbers within a crystalline cocoon, wrapped in the music of a 1,000-year-old song, waiting for the moment when the comet's approach aligns with the stars and the ancient seal is broken. When that moment comes, the comet streaks across the sky and Jirachi awakens. But its consciousness is not a permanent state. It is a brief window, a precious span of only 7 days, during which the Wish Pokémon can interact with the world, feel the warmth of the sun, and hear the voices of those who have waited for its return. 7 days out of 1,000 years. That is the rhythm of its existence, a cycle of near-eternal sleep and a single brilliant week of life. At the center of this mystery lies the true eye, a crystalline organ that rests on Jirachi's stomach. It is not merely a decorative feature, it is the source of its power, the lens through which wishes are focused and granted. The legends say that when the true eye opens, Jirachi can fulfill the desires of those with pure hearts. But the mechanism is not simple. It is not a vending machine for dreams. The true eye responds to sincerity, to the depth of emotion behind a wish, and to the purity of intention. A selfish desire may go unheard, a wish born of love, of hope, or of genuine need. That is what stirs the power within the crystal. There is a profound tragedy woven into this cycle. Jirachi is not alone in its long sleep. It is protected by a guardian, a being whose duty is to watch over the sleeping wish Pokémon for the entire millennium. Imagine that existence, a protector who must remain vigilant for 1,000 years, ensuring that no harm comes to the slumbering Jirachi, waiting for the brief 7-day awakening, and then preparing for another 1,000 years of silence. The Guardian knows that it will see Jirachi awake only once in its own lifetime, perhaps twice if it is extraordinarily long-lived. It is a role of immense patience, of devotion stretched across centuries, a love that exists in the spaces between moments of consciousness. The arrival of the comet is a time of celebration and danger. Ancient cultures, those who remembered the last visit, would prepare festivals, gathering at the site where the comet's energy was strongest. They would sing the 1,000-year song, a melody passed down through generations, a lullaby that both welcomes Jirachi and guides it back to rest. But the comet's light also attracts those who seek to exploit the power of the true eye. Throughout history, there have been those who wish to capture Jirachi, to force it to grant wishes for personal gain, to weaponize the very essence of hope. The wish Pokémon itself is small, childlike, and innocent. It does not understand the weight of its own power. It is curious and playful, eager to experience the world it has only glimpsed in dreams. To meet Jirachi is to meet a being that has lived for millennia, but has only truly lived for a handful of days. It is a paradox, a creature of immense age and eternal youth. When the 7 days end, the comet begins its slow departure from the planet's orbit. Jirachi's eyes grow heavy, the true eye closes, and the 1,000-year song fades into a whisper. The Guardian watches as the wish Pokémon returns to its crystalline slumber, knowing that the next time it awakens, the world will be different, people will be different, and the Guardian itself may no longer be there to greet it. It is a farewell that echoes through time, and as the comet disappears into the darkness of space, one cannot help but wonder what other travelers ride the celestial currents, what other beings drift between the stars, waiting for their moment to touch the world. The night sky is vast, and its secrets are many. The next visitor may not come with a wish, but with a hunger, and the light it brings may not be one of hope, but of intrusion. The previous chapter spoke of Jirachi, a being from the stars who awakens every 1,000 years to grant wishes. But what happens when the stars do not send a wish granter, but something far more alien, far more invasive? What happens when the cosmos itself sends a message, written in the language of mutation and viral infection? This is the story of Deoxys, and the moment the sky above Hoenn became a battlefield between the ancient guardians of the earth and a visitor from the void. It began not with a flash of light, but with a slow, silent drift, a meteor tumbling through the emptiness of space for millions of years, carrying within its rocky core a payload unlike any other. This was no ordinary celestial debris. Embedded in the meteorite was a crystalline organism, a life form born of cosmic radiation and the strange chemistry of the interstellar medium. When the meteor entered the atmosphere of the Pokémon world, it burned with a brilliant fire, a streak of white-hot terror across the night sky. It crashed into the ocean near the Hoenn region, sending a shockwave through the water and a ripple through the fabric of life itself. From the wreckage of that fallen star, something stirred. The extraterrestrial virus, the DNA of the void, began to adapt. It absorbed the energy of its new environment, the very essence of the planet, and it began to mutate at an alarming rate. The organism was not a Pokémon in the traditional sense. It had no evolutionary line, no natural habitat, no place in the ancient myths of the land. It was a pure anomaly, a biological cipher. It formed a body of red and blue crystalline fibers, a central nervous system of pure energy, and a single unblinking eye that seemed to see into the very soul of the world. This was Deoxys, the DNA Pokémon, a creature born not of Earth, but of the infinite cold expanse beyond. Deoxys was a paradox. It was a virus that had achieved sentience, a fragment of a dead star that had learned to think. Its very existence challenged the definition of what a Pokémon could be. Was it a life form, a disease, a weapon? The Pokédex entries from that time are filled with confusion and awe. One entry describes it as a Pokémon that mutated from an extraterrestrial virus, a being of pure genetic code that could rearrange its molecular structure at will. Another speaks of its 4 forms, each a different configuration of its body, optimized for attack, defense, speed, or a balanced state. It could shift its form in an instant, a living shifter that defied the very concept of species. The arrival of Deoxys did not go unnoticed. Deep in the upper atmosphere, far above the clouds and the storms, a guardian watched. Rayquaza, the sky-high Pokémon, the ancient serpent of the ozone layer, felt the disturbance. For millennia, Rayquaza had patrolled the skies, keeping the peace between the land and the sea, ensuring that Groudon and Kyogre never again tore the world apart. But this was a threat from beyond its domain. This was not a battle between earth and ocean. This was a clash between the terrestrial and the celestial, between a legend born of the planet and an intruder from the stars. The first encounter was a silent, terrifying standoff. Rayquaza descended from its heavenly perch, its emerald body cutting through the clouds like a blade of pure sky. It found Deoxys hovering over the ocean, its crystalline form pulsing with an eerie light. The two beings regarded each other, two apex predators from different worlds. There was no negotiation, no understanding. There was only the primal instinct of territory and survival. Rayquaza, the ancient protector, saw an invader. Deoxys, the cosmic wanderer, saw a world to be studied or perhaps to be consumed. The battle that followed was unlike anything Owen had ever witnessed. Rayquaza unleashed its signature hyper beam, a concentrated blast of atmospheric energy that could shatter mountains. But Deoxys did not simply absorb the attack. It shifted its form, its body becoming a blur of red and blue, and it dodged with a speed that seemed to defy physics. It retaliated with a Psycho Boost, a psychic assault so powerful it warped the air around it, sending a shockwave that could be felt for miles. The two titans clashed in the sky, a dance of destruction that painted the clouds with flashes of green and crimson. But this was not a battle that could be won by force alone. Rayquaza, for all its power, was fighting a being that did not follow the rules of its world. Deoxys could regenerate, adapt, and change its strategy in an instant. It was a virus after all, and viruses do not fight fair. They infiltrate, they mutate, they overwhelm. The more Rayquaza attacked, the more Deoxys seemed to learn, to evolve, to become something new. The Guardian of the Sky was facing an enemy that could not be defeated by brute strength. An enemy that was, in a very real sense, a living question mark. In the end, the conflict was not resolved by a final, decisive blow. It was a stalemate, a tense equilibrium. Deoxys, perhaps realizing that this world was not as defenseless as it first appeared, retreated. It vanished into the depths of the ocean, or perhaps into the upper atmosphere, or perhaps into a dimension that no one had yet discovered. The meteorite that had brought it was recovered, studied, and sealed away. But the memory of that encounter lingered, a warning carved into the collective consciousness of the Hoenn region. Deoxys had changed everything. It had shown that the universe was not empty, that the stars were not silent. It had proven that the definition of a Pokémon was not a closed book, but a living, evolving text. If a virus from space could become a sentient being, what else was out there? What other secrets were waiting in the darkness between worlds? The legend of Deoxys was not just a story of a battle. It was a story of a door opening, a door that led to the infinite unknown. And as that door creaked open, another legend began to stir far to the west, in a region of ancient castles and bitter wars. A legend of a dragon split in two, of truth and ideals, of a king who sought to control the very nature of reality. The stage was set for the next chapter in the history of legendary Pokémon, a chapter that would be written in fire and ice, in the clash of two opposing forces that could never be reconciled. The dragon of truth and ideals was waiting. The clash between Rayquaza and Deoxys, high above the Hoenn region, was a battle between two worlds colliding, a celestial invader and a planetary guardian. But while that conflict was one of raw power and survival, the story we turn to now is far older, far more human, and far more tragic. It is a story not of an external threat from the stars, but of a fracture that came from within, a division of the soul itself. This is the legend of the Unova region, a land scarred not by meteors or natural disasters, but by an eternal war of philosophy, a war that began with two brothers and ended with a dragon torn apart. Long before the great cities of Unova rose from the earth, before the Skyarrow Bridge connected its disparate shores, the region was a single unified kingdom, and at the heart of this kingdom was a dragon of immense power, a creature so vast and so ancient that its very presence shaped the land around it. This was the original dragon, a being of pure, unbridled energy, a living embodiment of the force that drives all progress and all conflict. It was not a creature of nature in the way of Groudon or Kyogre, nor a cosmic principle like Dialga or Palkia. The original dragon was something else entirely. It was the physical manifestation of human ambition, of the very fire that drives civilization forward, for better or for worse. The kingdom was ruled by twin heroes, two brothers who shared a bond deeper than blood. They were the pillars of their society, one known for his unwavering commitment to truth, the other for his passionate pursuit of ideals. For a time, they ruled together in harmony, their differences complementing each other. The brother of truth saw the world as it was, unflinching in the face of reality, while the brother of ideals saw the world as it could be, dreaming of a future shaped by hope. And the original dragon served them both, its power channeled through their united will. But harmony, as it so often does, began to fray. The brothers, once inseparable, found their visions diverging. The brother of truth believed that the path forward required honesty above all else, that a society built on lies would crumble. The brother of ideals argued that sometimes a beautiful dream was worth more than a harsh reality, that the pursuit of a perfect future justified the sacrifices of the present. Their debates grew heated, their councils grew tense, and the kingdom itself began to split, the people taking sides in the great philosophical divide. The original dragon, bound to the will of both brothers, felt the conflict tearing at its very essence. It could not serve two masters with such opposing desires. The dragon was a single being, but it contained within it the potential for both truth and ideals, for the fire of creation and the cold of destruction. And so, in a moment of cataclysmic rupture, the dragon did the unthinkable. It split itself apart. The catastrophic split that created Reshiram, Zekrom, and the hollow shell Kyurem was not a gentle separation. It was a violent sundering, a tearing of the fabric of reality that sent shockwaves across the entire Unova region. The sky turned black, the earth trembled, and a great pillar of fire and lightning erupted from the heart of the kingdom. When the light faded, where once there was one dragon, there were three. The brother of truth, the one who valued honesty above all, was drawn to the white flame. From the ashes of the original dragon rose Reshiram, a creature of pure white scales and flowing fur, its tail burning with a fire that could reveal the truth of any heart. Reshiram was the embodiment of truth itself, a being of unwavering conviction that would burn away all deception. It was said that those who looked into Reshiram's eyes could see the world as it truly was, stripped of all illusion and pretense. The brother of ideals, the dreamer, was drawn to the black thunder. From the lightning of the split emerged Zekrom, a creature of dark, metallic scales, and a massive tail that spun like a generator, crackling with the electricity of 1,000 storms. Zekrom was the embodiment of ideals, a being of pure ambition that would electrify the hearts of those who dared to dream. It was said that Zekrom's thunder could inspire the most impossible of hopes, giving power to those who believed in a better world. But there was a third piece. The split was not clean. When the original dragon was torn apart, something was left behind. A hollow shell, a frozen husk of what once was. This was Kyurem, the boundary Pokémon, a creature of ice and emptiness. Kyurem was not truth, and it was not ideals. It was the absence of both, the cold void that remains when a great power is divided. It was the memory of what was lost, the lingering pain of a wound that would never fully heal. Kyurem retreated to the far north of Unova, to a cavern of eternal ice, where it waited, patient and silent, for the day when it might become whole again. The two brothers, now each with their own dragon, turned on each other. The kingdom that had once been united was now a battlefield. The war of philosophy became a war of fire and lightning. Reshirem's flames clashed with Zekrom's thunder, and the land of Unova was scarred by their conflict. Mountains were leveled, rivers were redirected, and entire cities were reduced to ash. The eternal war of philosophy that scarred the landscape of Unova was not a war of armies, but a war of gods. The people watched in horror as their heroes, once the symbols of unity, became the architects of their destruction. In the end, neither brother could claim victory. The war had exhausted them both, and the kingdom lay in ruins. The two dragons, sensing the futility of the conflict, withdrew from the world. Reshiram and Zekrom were sealed away, their power dormant, waiting for a new hero to awaken them. The brothers themselves faded into legend, their names lost to time, remembered only as the twin heroes of a forgotten age. The Unova region that rose from the ashes of that war was a land forever changed. The scars of the conflict are still visible today, in the rugged mountains of the north, in the deep canyons of the desert, in the very shape of the land itself. The people of Unova learned to be wary of absolute truths and unyielding ideals, understanding that the greatest threats often come not from outside, but from within. But the story does not end with the dragons sealed away. The legacy of the twin heroes lived on, not just in the land, but in the hearts of those who remembered. And in the centuries that followed, a new legend would rise from the ashes of the old. A legend of four swords, a legend of justice, a legend that would bring a new kind of hope to a world still recovering from the wounds of the past. That is the story we will turn to next in Chapter 16, The Swords of Justice. The legend of the twin heroes and the original dragon of the Unova region speaks to a war fought between brothers, a conflict of ideals that shattered a single being into three. That story is one of human ambition and the catastrophic consequences of division. But Unova holds another legend, one that does not begin with a king or a dragon, but with a cry for help from the innocent. It is the story of the Swords of Justice, and it begins not in a castle, but on a battlefield where Pokémon were the only casualties. Long before the towers of Castelia City rose, or the desert sands of Route 4 swallowed ancient ruins, the land that would become Unova was a place of constant conflict. Human kingdoms clashed over territory, resources, and power, and in these wars, Pokémon were used as living weapons. They were forced into battle, not for honor or survival, but as expendable soldiers in the endless quarrels of men. It was a dark age, a time when the bond between human and Pokémon was twisted into something cruel and exploitative. The fields ran red, and the forests echoed with the cries of wounded creatures who had no say in the wars they were forced to fight. It was in this age of suffering that three Pokémon rose to become something more than mere fighters. They became symbols. Cobalion, the Iron Will, was a being of immense strength and unwavering resolve. Its body was clad in a metallic hide, and its horns were like blades forged in the heart of a mountain. Terrakion, the Rock of Defiance, was a force of raw power, a creature whose very presence could shatter stone and send enemies fleeing in terror. And Virizion, the grace of the meadow, was swift and elegant, its movements like a dance of leaves in the wind, but its strikes carried the precision of a master. These three were not born to be heroes. They were ordinary Pokémon who chose to stand against the tide of cruelty. They began by protecting the weak. When a group of Pokémon was cornered by human soldiers, Cobalion would appear, standing between the aggressors and the frightened. When a village of Pokémon was threatened by the fires of war, Terrakion would charge through the lines, scattering the attackers. When a wounded creature lay alone in the forest, Virizion would appear, its gentle presence a promise of safety. They did not seek to destroy humanity. They sought to end the suffering that humanity had caused. Their legend spread across the land, whispered among the Pokémon of the forests and mountains. They were called the Swords of Justice, and they became a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. But the Swords of Justice knew they could not fight forever. They were powerful, but they were not immortal. They needed to pass on their legacy to ensure that the protection of the innocent would continue long after they were gone, and so they sought a student. They found one in a young Pokémon named Keldeo, a small, cult-like creature with a heart full of courage, but a spirit that had not yet been tested. Keldeo was eager, perhaps too eager, wanted to become a hero overnight, to wield the power of the swords and charge into battle. But the swords knew that true strength was not born from impatience. It was forged in the crucible of hardship and discipline. The training of Keldeo was rigorous. Cobalion taught it the importance of resolve, of standing firm in the face of overwhelming odds. Terrakion taught it the power of conviction, of striking with the full force of one's belief. And Virizion taught it the grace of patience, of knowing when to strike and when to wait. Keldeo struggled. It wanted to prove itself, to show that it was worthy of the title of a Sword of Justice. But the swords were not interested in titles. They were interested in character. They pushed Keldeo to its limits, forcing it to confront its own fears and doubts. They taught it that the true enemy was not the human armies, but the tyranny that drove them to cruelty. They taught it that the greatest battle was not against an external foe, but against the weakness within. The moment of truth came when Keldeo faced a powerful opponent, a being of pure tyranny that threatened everything the swords had built. It was a test of everything it had learned. Keldeo hesitated. The fear was real, the doubt was overwhelming. But then it remembered the words of Cobalion, the strength of Terrakion, the grace of Virizion. It remembered the faces of the Pokémon it had sworn to protect. And in that moment, Keldeo found its resolve. It did not fight for glory or for recognition. It fought because it was the right thing to do. It fought because the innocent deserved a champion. And in that moment, Keldeo became the fourth Sword of Justice, the one who would carry the legacy forward into a new age. But the age of war eventually ended. The human kingdoms grew weary of conflict, and the lands began to heal. The Swords of Justice, having fulfilled their purpose, did not remain as active warriors. They faded into the background, becoming silent watchers of the moors and forests. They no longer charged into battle, but they remained ever vigilant. They watched over the wild places, ensuring that the cruelty of the past would never return. They became legends, stories told by the wind and the trees, reminders of a time when three Pokémon stood against the darkness and won. And Keldeo, now a master in its own right, roams the world, seeking new students, new causes, and new ways to uphold the ideals of justice. The story of the Swords of Justice is not a tale of gods or cosmic forces. It is a tale of choice. It is a tale of ordinary beings who chose to become extraordinary, who chose to stand for something greater than themselves. It is a reminder that heroism is not a birthright, but a decision made in the face of fear, and it is a testament to the power of resolve, the quiet strength that lies within every creature, waiting to be awakened. And yet, even as the Swords of Justice retreated into the silence of the moors, other forces were stirring in the world. Forces not of steel or stone, but of wind and storm, of lightning and rain. Forces that had no interest in justice, only in the raw, untamed power of nature itself. The story of those forces, the ones who ride the tempests and command the skies, it is a tale for another night. It is the story of the forces of nature, and it begins with a single, distant rumble of thunder over the horizon. The story of the Swords of Justice reminds us that Unova is a region shaped by conflict, by the clash between human ambition and the natural world. But the swords were not the only legendary beings to emerge from that history. There were others, older and wilder, who answered not to the call of justice, but to the raw, untamed forces of the earth and sky themselves. These are the forces of nature, and their story begins not with a noble quest, but with the chaos of the harvest. In the fields and farmlands of ancient Unova, the people lived in a constant state of precarious balance. Their crops depended on the wind and the rain, on the warmth of the sun and the fertility of the soil. But these gifts were not freely given. They were delivered by three spirits, capricious and terrifying, who swept across the land like living storms. Tornadus, the cyclone Pokémon, would descend from the heavens with gales that could flatten entire villages. Thundurus, the bolt-strike Pokémon, would crack the sky with lightning, setting the dry fields ablaze. And between them, they brought a kind of beautiful, destructive chaos that the people could neither predict nor control. The farmers learned to read the signs. When the clouds gathered in a spiral and the wind began to howl with a voice that sounded almost like laughter, they knew Tornadus was near. When the air grew thick and heavy and the hairs on the back of their necks stood on end, they knew Thundurus was circling overhead. These were not gods to be worshipped in quiet temples. They were forces to be endured, to be feared, and sometimes to be appeased with offerings left at the edge of the fields. But there was a third spirit, one who moved through the chaos, like a hand reaching into a storm to still it. Landorus, the abundance Pokémon, was the punisher of chaos and the bringer of fertility. Where Tornadus and Thundurus brought destruction, Landorus brought balance. It was said that when the two brothers of the sky grew too wild, when their games threatened to tear the world apart, Landorus would descend from the mountains and force them into submission. The earth would tremble, the soil would turn rich and dark, and the rains would fall gently once more. The harvest would be saved, and the people would breathe again. This cycle repeated itself season after season, year after year. The people of Unova came to understand that the three spirits were not enemies, but part of a single living system. Tornadus and Thundurus were the wild energy of the world, the necessary disruption that cleared the old and made way for the new. And Landorus was the anchor, the force that ensured that disruption never became destruction. Together, they were the pulse of the land itself. For generations, this was the whole of the legend. Three spirits, three aspects of the harvest, three names whispered in prayers and warnings. But the story did not end there. Deep in the folklore of the region, there were whispers of a fourth presence, one that had been forgotten, or perhaps deliberately hidden, a spirit that did not bring storms or lightning, but something far more subtle and far more powerful. Her name was Enamoris, and she was the love that bound the forces together. Enamoris, the love Pokémon, was not a force of destruction or fertility in the way the others were. She was the embodiment of gratitude, of the deep, quiet appreciation that the land feels when it is cared for. In the oldest stories, she was said to appear at the end of the harvest season, when the fields were golden and the barns were full. She would glide over the crops, her presence bringing a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. She was the reason the farmers felt a pang of sadness when the last sheaf of wheat was cut, and the reason they looked forward to the planting of the next season. But Enamoris was also a wanderer. Unlike the other three, who were bound to Unova by the cycle of the harvest, she was a migratory spirit. She followed the seasons across the world, appearing in different regions at different times of the year. In the spring, she might be seen in the meadows of Sinnoh, a pink form dancing among the flowers. In the autumn, she would return to Unova, just in time to bless the final harvest. Her migration was a secret rhythm, a hidden heartbeat that connected the lands of Pokémon in a way that few ever understood. The introduction of Enamorus into the legend changed everything. It revealed that the forces of nature were not just a local myth, but part of a global pattern. The storms of Tornadus and Thunderous, the grounding presence of Landorus, and the loving grace of Enamorus were all expressions of the same underlying truth, that the world is alive and that it speaks in many voices. Some of those voices are loud and terrifying, and some are soft and almost silent, but all of them are necessary. And so the legend of the forces of nature is not just a story about 4 powerful Pokémon. It is a story about the relationship between chaos and order, between destruction and creation, between the wild and the tame. It is a reminder that the harvest is not a guarantee, but a gift, one that must be earned through patience, respect, and a willingness to endure the storms. As the seasons turn and the years pass, the spirits continue their eternal dance. Tornadus and Thunderous still chase each other across the skies, their laughter echoing in the thunder. Landorus still stands firm, his feet planted in the soil, ready to bring peace when the chaos grows too great. And Enamorus still wanders, a whisper of love moving through the world, reminding all who see her that even the wildest forces can be softened by gratitude. But the story of Unova is not the only legend that speaks of cycles and balance. Far to the west, in the ancient region of Kalos, there is another tale, one that speaks of life and death in a way that is even more profound. That is the story of the Kalos cycle of life, and it is a story that will take us deep into the heart of what it means to exist, to change, and to return. The forces of nature we explored in Unova were wild, untamed spirits of wind, thunder, and fertility. They brought storms, and they brought harvests, but they were not concerned with the delicate balance of a single life. They were forces of a grand scale. But in the Kalos region, the legendaries are not about the weather or the seasons. They are about something far more intimate, far more personal, and far more terrifying. They are about the 2 bookends of every living thing, the moment you begin and the moment you end. The Kalos region is a place of ancient beauty, of sprawling forests and elegant cities, but its deepest mythology is a stark and simple one. It is the story of a cycle, a wheel that turns without mercy. At the center of this cycle are 2 beings of immense power, and a third that watches to make sure the wheel never stops. The first of these is Xerneas, the life Pokémon. Xerneas is not merely a creature that heals wounds or restores health. Xerneas is the bestowal of existence itself. Its form is that of a great 4-legged stag, its antlers glowing with a prismatic light that shifts through every color imaginable. Those antlers are the source of its power, and they are known in Kalosian legend as the Horns of Light. According to the oldest stories of the region, Xerneas is the one who grants eternal life. But this is not a simple gift. It is not a spell cast on a single person. Xerneas, when it chooses to act, can extend the life of any living being indefinitely. It can halt the decay of cells, stop the march of time on a biological level, but this power is not given freely. Xerneas is said to sleep for 1,000 years within a tree, its energy stored and dormant. When it awakens, it bestows life upon the world, but it does so in a specific way. It shares its own life force, its own essence, with the creatures around it. This is not a resurrection. This is a prolonging, a renewal. The Horns of Light are a conduit for this energy, and when Xerneas is active, the very land seems to pulse with vitality. Flowers bloom out of season, ancient trees grow new leaves, and the old feel a strange strength in their bones. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated creation, but the cycle has a second half, and it is just as necessary. Yveltal is the destruction Pokémon. Where Xerneas is the stag of life, Yveltal is a massive avian creature, its body a deep crimson and black, its wings like the folds of a funeral shroud. Its tail trails behind it like a plume of smoke, and its eyes hold a cold, ancient awareness. Yveltal does not simply kill. Yveltal is the end. It is the conclusion of every biological cycle. When Yveltal spreads its wings and flies, it is said to absorb the life force of everything around it. It does not feed on flesh or blood. It feeds on the very energy of being. The legend of Yveltal is not a story of malice. It is a story of necessity. In the same way that a forest fire clears away old growth to make room for new seeds, Yveltal clears away life to make room for the next cycle. It is the compost that feeds the soil of the future. The most chilling aspect of Yveltal's power is the cocoon. When Yveltal reaches the end of its own life, or when it has absorbed enough energy, it does not simply die. It transforms into a cocoon. This cocoon is a shell of pure hardened energy, and inside it, Yveltal waits. It waits for the moment when it is needed again. It waits for the balance to tip too far toward life. And when it emerges, it does so with a terrible cry, a sound that is said to be the last thing many creatures ever hear. This is the inevitable end that every living thing in Kalos must face. You cannot outrun Yveltal. You cannot bargain with it. It is the natural conclusion of the gift that Xerneas gives. Life and death are not enemies in this mythology. They are partners. They are two hands of the same clock. And then there is Zygarde. If Xerneas is the beginning and Yveltal is the end, Zygarde is the watcher. Zygarde is the order Pokémon, and its role is to maintain the balance of the Kalos ecosystem. But Zygarde is not a single monolithic entity in the way the other two are. Zygarde is a collective. It exists in a state of cellular dispersion. There are thousands, perhaps millions, of tiny cells scattered throughout the caves and forests of Kalos. Each cell is a piece of Zygarde, and they communicate with one another. They sense the state of the environment. They monitor the health of the land. When the ecosystem is stable, these cells remain dormant. They are nothing more than green and black specks on the walls of a cavern. But when the balance is threatened, when Xerneas grants too much life, or Yveltal brings too much destruction, the cells begin to gather. They flow together like water, merging and combining. First, they form a small dog-like creature known as Zygarde 10%. This form is fast and agile, capable of moving through the region to investigate disturbances. If the threat is greater, the cells continue to gather, forming a larger, more serpentine form known as Zygarde 50%. This is the form most commonly depicted in Kalosian art, a great serpent of black and green, its body segmented like a chain of interlocking gears. It is a creature of pure order, and its eyes glow with a cold, analytical light. But if the threat is catastrophic, if the cycle itself is in danger of breaking, then Zygarde can achieve its complete form. Zygarde Complete is a towering humanoid figure, a colossus of cellular energy. In this form, it has the power to reshape the environment itself. It can unleash a devastating beam of energy called Core Enforcer, which silences the abilities of any Pokémon that dares to disrupt the natural order. Zygarde does not take sides. It does not favor life over death. It favors balance. It is the referee of a game that has been played since the first cell divided in the primordial Kalosian Sea, and its watchful eyes are always there, even when you cannot see them. Every time you walk through a forest in Kalos, you are walking through a field of Zygarde cells. They are the silent observers of every birth and every death. This cycle, this eternal dance of Xerneas and Yveltal with Zygarde as the choreographer, is the foundation of all life in the region. But it is not the only ancient power that sleeps beneath the soil of Kalos. There is another story, a darker story, about a weapon that was built to break the cycle. A weapon that was designed to grant immortality, not through the horns of light, but through force. A weapon that would change the history of the region forever. That story is the story of the ultimate weapon. We ended the last chapter with Xerneas and Yveltal, the eternal cycle of life and death that governs the natural world. But in Kalos, there is a third force that sits between them, a being of balance named Zygarde, and a story that is not about the cycle of nature, but about the cycle of human ambition and its terrible consequences. This is the story of the ultimate weapon, and of a king who lost everything. 3,000 years ago, the region we now call Kalos was a very different place. It was a land of lush forests and ancient stone cities, ruled by a king named AZ. He was a tall man, towering over his subjects, with a gentle demeanor and a love for his people. He was also a man who loved his Pokémon more than anything in the world. His closest companion was a small, unassuming Pokémon, a Floette that had been with him since childhood. They were inseparable, a symbol of the bond between human and Pokémon that the region prided itself on. But war came to Kalos. It was a war that did not begin with a single act of aggression, but with a slow, grinding tension between neighboring kingdoms. Resources grew scarce, borders were disputed, and old grudges festered. The war that devastated Kalos 3,000 years ago was not a quick conflict. It was a generation-spanning catastrophe that turned the fields of the region into graveyards. Cities were burned, forests were salted, and the rivers ran red with the blood of both humans and Pokémon. AZ watched his kingdom crumble. He watched his people starve. And then, the war took from him the one thing he could not bear to lose. His Floette was killed in the fighting. The king was consumed by grief. He could not accept that his closest friend was gone, that her small, delicate form would never again perch on his shoulder. In his despair, he turned to the one thing he had left, his power as a ruler. He ordered his greatest engineers and mages to construct a machine unlike anything the world had ever seen. It would be a weapon of absolute destruction, a device capable of ending the war in an instant. But it required a power source beyond any known fuel. It required the very life force of Pokémon, and so began the harvest. Across the war-torn lands of Kalos, soldiers under AZ's command captured Pokémon by the thousands. They were not killed for their meat or their hides. They were taken alive, herded into underground chambers beneath the king's palace, and connected to the machine. Their life energy, the essence of their souls, was drained from them and stored in a massive core. The machine was called the Ultimate Weapon, and its construction took years. During that time, the captured Pokémon suffered in ways that are difficult to describe. They were not simply used as batteries. They were slowly consumed, their vitality siphoned away, until they were nothing but empty shells. The lingering trauma of the Kalos region and its impact on Mega Evolution lore cannot be overstated. This event, this monstrous act of harvesting life, left a scar on the very land itself. It is said that the energy released by the Ultimate Weapon did not simply dissipate. It seeped into the ground, into the stones, into the air. It created a resonance that would later be tapped into by the phenomenon known as Mega Evolution. The stones used to trigger Mega Evolution, the Keystones and the Megastones, are believed by many scholars to be crystallized remnants of that ancient energy. They are the fossilized screams of the Pokémon who died to power AZ's grief. When the Ultimate Weapon was finally complete, AZ activated it. A beam of pure, white light shot from the center of his palace, piercing the sky and spreading across the entire region. The light was not hot, but it was blinding. It washed over the armies of his enemies, and in an instant, they were gone. Not dead, not burned, but erased from existence. The war was over. Kalos was safe. But the cost was beyond measure. And then, something miraculous happened. The energy of the Ultimate Weapon, having been drawn from the life force of so many Pokémon, still carried a spark of their essence. That spark, that residual will to live, flowed back into the machine and touched AZ himself. It did not give him power. It gave him something far more terrible. It gave him immortality. He would not age. He would not die. He would walk the earth forever, a living monument to his own crime. But the Floette did not return, not at first. AZ wandered the empty halls of his palace, a king without a kingdom, a man without a purpose. He had won the war, but he had lost everything that made life worth living. The Floette, however, had not truly perished. The energy of the Ultimate Weapon had also touched her, and she was revived, a ghost of her former self. Bound to the machine and to the king, she returned to him, but she could not forgive him. She could not look at him without seeing the thousands of lives he had sacrificed. So she left him, taking with her the eternal flower, a bloom that had been infused with the weapon's power. Azed was left alone. For 3,000 years he walked the earth, a forgotten king in a world that had moved on without him. He became a legend, a myth, a tall stranger who appeared in times of great crisis, offering cryptic advice before vanishing again. He watched his kingdom crumble into dust, his palace become a ruin, his name erased from history books. He watched the descendants of the Pokémon he had sacrificed evolve and change, adapting to a world that still bore the scars of his grief. And then, 3,000 years later, a young trainer from the town of Vanderville arrived in the city of Lumiose. They met a tall, strange man who seemed to know more than he should. They helped him find a small, flower-like Pokémon that had been lost for millennia. And in that moment, the cycle was finally allowed to close. The Floette returned to AZ, and the king, for the first time in 3,000 years, was able to let go. He deactivated the ultimate weapon, ending its potential for further destruction, and he and his Floette left the region together, finally at peace. But the machine still exists. Its core, dormant but not dead, lies beneath the earth of Kalos, a reminder of what happens when love turns to obsession and grief becomes destruction, and the energy it released still lingers, shaping the world in ways that are only now being understood. The story of AZ is not just a history lesson, it is a warning, and it is a foundation for everything that comes next. For the Guardians of Alola, who would face their own ancient weapon and their own terrible choice. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. The previous chapter ended with the terrible cost of the ultimate weapon, a machine that drained the life force of countless Pokémon to fuel a war of vengeance. But that was 3,000 years ago, in a distant region. Tonight, we travel across the ocean, to a place where the myths are not about ancient kings or cosmic dragons, but about the very land beneath your feet. We arrive in Alola, a tropical archipelago where the sun beats down on volcanic peaks and the ocean glows with an inner light. Here, the legends are not written in stone tablets or buried in towers. They are whispered on the wind, felt in the rustle of the palm fronds, and seen in the shimmer of the tide pools. For Alola is not protected by a single deity or a trio of forces. It is watched over by 4, each one as fickle and powerful as the island they call home. These are the Tapu, the guardian deities of Alola. Their names are Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Bulu, and Tapu Fini. Each one presides over one of the 4 main islands, and their presence is not a distant, abstract blessing. It is a tangible living force that shapes every aspect of Alolan life. The people of Alola do not worship these deities in the way one might pray to a god in a temple. Instead, they live in a state of constant, respectful negotiation. The Tapu are not benevolent protectors in the human sense. They are forces of nature, as unpredictable as a sudden storm or a volcanic eruption. They can bring abundant harvests, calm seas, and good fortune, but they can just as easily turn their backs, unleashing torrential rains, earthquakes, or a plague of misfortune upon those who displease them. And so, the Alolan people developed a system to manage this relationship, a system that has endured for centuries. Each island is led by a kahuna, a human chosen not by birthright or election, but by the direct will of the Tapu themselves. The kahuna is not a ruler in the traditional sense. They are a mediator, a priest, and a champion. They are the one who interprets the will of the guardian, who performs the rituals to appease it, and who, when necessary, proves their worth in battle. The selection of a kahuna is a sacred and mysterious process. The Tapu will observe the people of the island, watching for a soul that possesses the right balance of strength, wisdom, and humility. Then, in a moment that can come without warning, the guardian will make its choice known. It might appear in a vision, it might bless a particular individual with a sign, or it might simply challenge a potential candidate to a trial. To be chosen by a Tapu is the highest honor an Alolan can receive, but it is also a burden. The kahuna must always be ready to defend their island, not just from human threats, but from the very deity they serve. The most famous of these guardians is Tapu Koko, the deity of Melemel Island. Tapu Koko is a being of pure, electric energy, a creature of lightning and speed. It is said to be the most active of the four, often seen darting across the sky or zipping through the forests, a blur of yellow and black. It is associated with the thrill of the hunt, the crackle of a storm, and the unpredictable joy of a sudden discovery. But even Tapu Koko, for all its playful energy, has a serious side. It is the guardian of the island where the first humans arrived in Alola, and it is fiercely protective of its territory. The kahuna of Melemele Island must be someone who can match Tapu Koko's speed of thought, someone who can anticipate its whims and channel its boundless energy into something constructive. Then there is Tapu Lele of Akala Island. Tapu Lele is the embodiment of life and vitality, a being of pure pink light and gentle swirling energy. It is associated with healing, growth, and the nurturing power of nature, but do not be fooled by its gentle appearance. Tapu Lele's healing power is not always a blessing. It can scatter its scales, which are said to contain a life-giving energy, across the land. This can cause plants to grow wild, animals to become unnaturally strong, and even the sick to be healed. But it can also lead to a chaotic, uncontrolled explosion of life. The kahuna of Akala Island must be someone who understands the balance of nature, someone who knows when to encourage growth and when to hold it back. On Ulaula Island, the guardian is Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu is a being of the earth, a creature of slow, deliberate power. It is associated with the soil, the roots of the ancient trees, and the patient, relentless force of nature that shapes the mountains. Tapu Bulu is not a creature of speed or flash. It is a being of endurance, of stubbornness, and of deep, abiding strength. It is said to be the most territorial of the four, and it will not hesitate to punish those who harm the land it protects. The kahuna of Ulaula Island must be someone with immense patience and unyielding resolve, someone who can stand firm against any threat, no matter how powerful. And finally, there is Tapu Fini of Pony Island. Tapu Fini is the most mysterious of the four, a being of mist and water, of illusion and hidden knowledge. It is associated with the deep ocean, the fog that rolls in from the sea, and the secrets that lie beneath the surface. Tapu Fini is said to be able to create illusions so powerful that they can trap the unwary forever. It is a guardian of boundaries, of the line between the known and the unknown. The kahuna of Pony Island must be someone who can see through deception, someone who can navigate the fog of uncertainty and find the truth. But the role of the Tapu is not just to select kahunas and oversee the islands. They are also the first line of defense against a threat that is older than human memory. Long before the first settlers arrived in Alola, long before the islands were even named, there was a war. It was not a war between humans or even between Pokémon. It was a war between worlds. From the depths of a dimension known as Ultra Space, beings of pure consuming light emerged. They were not like the Pokémon of Alola. They were creatures of a different order, beings that fed on light and energy, and they saw Alola as a feast. These were the first Ultra Beasts, invaders from beyond the veil of reality. The Tapu rose to meet them. The battle that followed was not a clash of armies. It was a struggle of cosmic forces. Tapu Koko's lightning clashed against the blinding light of the invaders. Tapu Lele's life-giving energy was used to heal the wounds of the land itself. Tapu Bulu rooted the invaders to the earth, slowing their advance. And Tapu Fini wove illusions so powerful that the Ultra Beasts became lost in a maze of their own making. For days and nights, the battle raged. The very fabric of reality was torn and stitched back together. But in the end, the Tapu prevailed. They drove the invaders back into the Ultra wormholes, sealing the rifts with their own power. The victory came at a great cost, but Alola was saved. The memory of that ancient war is not forgotten. It is woven into the very culture of Alola. The rituals of the people, the trials they undergo, the offerings they leave at shrines. All of it is a way of honouring the Tapu, and asking for their continued protection. The people know that the ultra wormholes could open again at any moment. They know that the Tapu are not just guardians of the islands, but guardians of the boundary between their world and the unknown. And so, they perform their rituals with a sincerity that borders on desperation. They dance, they sing, they offer their finest fruits and their most precious stones. They do all of this, not because they fear the Tapu, but because they understand that the Tapu are the only thing standing between them and a darkness that would consume everything. The Kahuna system, the island trials, the grand festivals, all of it is a living, breathing testament to the ancient pact between the people of Alola and their fickle, powerful protectors. It is a system built on respect, on vigilance, and on the understanding that the price of safety is eternal awareness. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, think of those 4 guardians, standing watch over their islands, their eyes fixed on the sky, waiting for the next tier in the fabric of reality. For the light that protects Alola is not a gentle, constant glow. It is a fire that must be constantly fed, a flame that can flicker and die if the people forget. And there is a story, a darker story, about what happens when that light fails, when a guardian is not enough, when a being from beyond the stars consumes the very essence of a world. That is the tale of the light that failed, and it is a story we will explore in the next chapter. The Tapu deities had held their vigil for centuries, watching over the islands of Alola with a vigilance born of ancient memory. They remembered the invaders who had once torn through the fabric of their world, creatures from beyond the known dimensions, who sought to claim the light of their realm. But what the Tapus had faced was only a prelude, a skirmish compared to the catastrophe that had already befallen another world entirely. For in the vast and lonely spaces between realities, there existed a being whose story was one of the most tragic in all of Pokémon history. Before we speak of Necrozma, we must first understand the world it came from. There was a dimension, a place we now call Ultra Space, where a civilization once flourished under a light so brilliant and pure that it sustained all life. At the center of this world was a being of immense power, a creature made of pure, radiant energy. Its body was a prism of living light, and from its form, it showered its home dimension with warmth and illumination. This was Necrozma, the Blinding One, the source of all light in its universe. And for a time, everything was in perfect balance. But the inhabitants of that world grew ambitious. They looked upon Necrozma, upon its endless radiance, and they saw not a benevolent force of nature, but a resource to be harvested. They sought to control the light, to bend it to their will, and in their greed, they made a terrible mistake. They attacked Necrozma, attempting to capture its essence and drain its power. The battle that followed was cataclysmic. Necrozma, in its fury and its pain, lashed out, but it was overwhelmed. The light that had once been a blessing was torn from its body, shattered into fragments that scattered across the dimensions. What remained of Necrozma was a hollow shell, a dark and twisted form that hungered for the light it had lost. The being that had once been the sun of its world became a creature of endless, agonizing need. It drifted through the void, a shadow of its former self, searching for any source of illumination it could consume. And in its desperate wandering, it found a path to another world, a world with a sun and a moon that burned bright and full. This was the world of the Ultra Recon Squad, a group of explorers from a dimension known as Ultra Megalopolis. Their own world had been plunged into darkness after the fall of Necrozma, and they had been searching for a way to restore the light. But when they discovered the Alola region, they saw not a solution, but a temptation. They saw the radiant light of Solgaleo and Lunala, the celestial beings that governed the day and night cycles of that world. And in their desperation, they made a choice that would echo through history. The Ultra Recon Squad, with the help of their technology and their knowledge of ultra space, devised a plan to capture Solgaleo and Lunala. They believed that by harnessing the power of these beings, they could bring light back to their own dying dimension. But their plan was flawed and it was cruel. They did not simply take the light, they transformed the very nature of Solgaleo and Lunala. The majestic lion that called the sun became a beast that devoured the sun, its mane turning into a dark, consuming maw. The elegant bat that called the moon became a creature that stole the moon, its wings spreading like a shroud of night. These transformed beings were no longer the guardians of Alola's sky. They were now the tools of Necrozma's hunger, the vessels through which it could feed. When Necrozma finally emerged from the Ultra wormhole, it did not come alone. It came with the dusk mane and dawn wings, forms of Solgaleo and Lunala, the beasts that had been twisted into servants of its endless craving. And in a final terrible act, Necrozma fused with these beings, creating a form of pure predatory light. It became Ultra Necrozma, a being of such intense brilliance that it could burn away the very concept of darkness. The tragedy of Necrozma is not that it became a monster, but that it was made into one. It was a creature of pure light, a source of life and warmth, that was broken and twisted by the greed of those who should have protected it. And in its broken state, it became a force of consumption, taking the light of other worlds to fill the void within itself. The Ultra Recon Squad, in their desperate attempt to save their own world, had doomed another. They had stolen the sun and the moon, and they had created a beast that would never be satisfied. But the story does not end there, for even in the depths of its hunger, there remained a flicker of what Necrozma once was, a memory of the light it had lost, a yearning for the peace it could never regain. In the hearts of those who would later face it, there was a choice to be made. Would they fight the beast, or would they try to heal the wound? Would they see Necrozma as a monster, or as a victim of a tragedy that spanned dimensions? The answer to that question would come in a time of great darkness, when the sky itself would fall, and the world would be plunged into a night that seemed to have no end. That moment, that cataclysm, would be remembered as the darkest day, and it would test the very limits of what it meant to be a hero. The story of Necrozma and its stolen light left Alola forever changed, but the universe has a way of repeating its most violent patterns. Light is taken, darkness falls, and somewhere in the cosmos, another catastrophe is already brewing. This time, it would not be a distant world that suffered the theft of its sun. This time the darkness came to a region called Galar, and it arrived not as a thief, but as a falling star. In the ancient history of Galar, before the first cities were built, before the first gym challenge was ever conceived, the sky above the region tore open. A meteor, unlike any ever recorded, streaked through the atmosphere and crashed into the earth with a force that reshaped the land itself. But this was no ordinary rock from space. Inside the meteor, dormant and waiting, was a creature of pure, concentrated energy, a being that had travelled across the void of space, a cosmic entity that fed on the life force of entire worlds. Its name was Eternatus. When Eternatus crashed into Galar, it did not simply land and lie still. The impact released a wave of energy that saturated the very ground, the air, and the water of the region. This energy, which would later be called Dynamax energy, was not a natural phenomenon of the planet. It was a byproduct of Eternatus' own presence, a leakage of its immense power into the environment. The soil of Galar became infused with this alien radiation, and any Pokémon that came into contact with it could suddenly grow to colossal size, their forms wreathed in red light. But this was not a gift. It was a symptom of a much deeper sickness. Eternatus itself began to absorb the energy of the region, drawing power from the very life around it. The sky turned a deep, unnatural purple. Storms of crimson lightning lashed the land. The Pokémon of Galar, exposed to uncontrolled Dynamax energy, became frenzied and destructive. The region was on the verge of total collapse. Its energy grid, if you can imagine such a concept in an ancient world, was being drained by a parasite from the stars. This was the darkest day, a period of such profound crisis that the very history of Galar was nearly erased. But in this time of absolute despair, two figures emerged. They were not gods, not in the way of Arceus or Dialga. They were kings, mortal rulers who wielded weapons forged from the very metal of the region, and they were not alone. By their side stood two Pokémon, noble and powerful, creatures of steel and courage. These were the heroes of Galar, the ones who would stand against the cosmic horror that had fallen from the sky. The two kings, whose names have been lost to the ages, understood that Eternatus could not be defeated by ordinary means. The creature was a living battery of infinite energy. Every attack only seemed to feed it, making it stronger, so the kings devised a plan. They would use the very Dynamax energy that Eternatus had unleashed, channeling it through their weapons and into their loyal companions. The two Pokémon, a sword and a shield in living form, would become the vessels of this power. The first of these companions was a wolf-like Pokémon, swift and graceful, with a blade held in its mouth. It was a creature of pure offense, a force of nature designed to cut through the darkness. The second was a counterpart, equally wolf-like, but built for defense. Its hide was a shield, its presence a wall against the tide of destruction. Together, they were the perfect balance, one to strike, one to protect. And when the two kings raised their weapons, the Dynamax energy flowed into these two Pokémon, transforming them into something greater than they had ever been. The battle that followed was not a war of armies. It was a duel between a cosmic parasite and the will of a region. Eternatus, in its true form, was a massive serpentine creature of bone and energy, a skeletal dragon that seemed to bend the light around it. It unleashed waves of pure Dynamax energy, trying to overwhelm the two heroes. But the sword-wielding wolf, now wreathed in golden light, struck with precision and fury, and the shield-bearing wolf, now clad in silver armor, absorbed every blow, protecting the kings and the land behind them. For days the battle raged. The sky remained purple. The storms did not cease. But slowly, the two kings and their canine companions began to turn the tide. They learned to control the Dynamax energy, to redirect it, to use it against the creature that had brought it. And finally, with a combined strike that shattered the very air, they drove Eternatus back. They did not destroy it, for such a being could not be destroyed. Instead, they sealed it deep within the earth, in a chamber beneath the region, where its energy could be contained. The darkest day ended. The sky cleared. The Pokémon of Galar returned to their normal size, and the two kings, exhausted but victorious, became legends. Their weapons were enshrined, their companions immortalized. But the memory of what had happened began to fade. Generations passed. The story became a myth, then a fairy tale, then a bedtime story told to children. The two kings were forgotten, their names lost. The two Pokémon, Zacian and Zamazenta, were remembered only as symbols, not as the living heroes they once were. And deep underground, Eternatus waited. It slept, but it did not die. Its energy still seeped into the soil, still created the phenomenon of Dynamax, the very power that Galar would later build its gym challenge around. The power that would make the region famous was nothing more than the lingering poison of a creature that had nearly destroyed everything. The people of Galar did not know that their greatest source of strength was also their greatest threat. They did not know that the darkest day was not a single event, but a cycle waiting to repeat. This forgotten history, this tale of two kings and their canine companions, holds the key to understanding what truly happened in Galar, and it sets the stage for a new chapter, a story of heroes who would rise again, of battles fought not with swords and shields, but with the very power that once nearly consumed the world. The story of Zacian and Zamazenta is not over. It is only waiting for the next darkest day to begin, and that day, as we will soon see in the chapter called The Heroes of Many Battles, is closer than anyone could imagine. The darkest day ended not with a cataclysm, but with a whimper. When Eternatus was finally driven back, its storm of concentrated energy sealed away, the skies over Galar did not clear all at once. They remained bruised, purple, and heavy for days, as if the region itself was recovering from a fever. The people emerged from their homes to find a landscape transformed, not by destruction, but by a strange lingering residue of power that would later be called Dynamax Energy, and at the centre of it all, standing in the ruins of what had once been the heart of the conflict, were two wolves. Zacian and Zamazenta had not come to conquer, they had come to end something, and when it was done, they did not stay to receive the thanks of a grateful kingdom. They did not pose for statues or accept titles. They turned and they walked away. Their retreat was not a flight, it was a return. They moved through the battered countryside of Galar, past villages still trembling from the aftershocks of the battle, past fields where the grass had been flattened by shockwaves, past rivers that had been momentarily boiled by the heat of Eternatus or Kor. The people who saw them pass did not approach. Some bowed, some wept, some simply stared, unable to comprehend what they had witnessed. But the wolves paid no mind. They had a destination in mind, and it was not a throne room or a temple. They entered the slumbering Weald, that ancient forest that had always seemed to exist just outside the boundaries of normal time. The trees there are older than any kingdom, their roots tangled deep into the earth, their canopies so thick that even at midday, the light filters down in green and gold shafts like stained glass. The air is heavy with the smell of damp earth and moss, and the silence is not empty, it is full of memory, full of waiting. Zacian and Zamazenta walked deeper into the Weald than any human had ever ventured. They passed the ruins of old shrines, stones carved with symbols that predated the written language of Galar. They crossed streams that seemed to flow backward, their waters moving against gravity, as if time itself had become confused in this place. And finally, they reached the heart of the Weald, a clearing where the trees formed a natural circle, and where the ground was soft with centuries of fallen leaves. There they lay down, not as animals seeking rest, but as guardians returning to their posts. They curled into the earth, and the forest began to grow over them. Vines crept across their flanks. Moss covered their armour. The rust that had always been present on their bodies deepened, not as decay, but as a kind of camouflage, a blending into the landscape. They became part of the Weald itself, their forms indistinguishable from the roots and stones around them. They slept, and they waited. This was not an abandonment, it was a promise. The wolves understood something that the people of Galar had not yet learned, that the threat of Eternatus was not permanently vanquished, it was merely delayed. The energy it had released into the world would remain, a dormant infection in the land's veins. And someday, when that energy stirred again, the heroes would need to wake. But until then, they would rest, their bodies becoming part of the very earth they had saved. The bond between the legendary wolves and the sovereign lineage of Galar was not a simple one. It was not a pact of loyalty or a contract of service. It was something older, something woven into the fabric of the region's identity. The kings and queens of Galar, from the earliest days of the monarchy, had understood that their rule was not absolute. They were stewards of a land that belonged, in a deeper sense, to the wolves. The crown was not a symbol of power over Galar, but of responsibility for it. And that responsibility included knowing when to step aside, when to let the old powers reclaim their place. The rusted sword and the rusted shield were not merely weapons, they were keys, they were anchors, they were the physical manifestations of the wolves' connection to the human world. When Zacian and Zamazenta retreated into the slumbering Weald, they did not take these artifacts with them. They left them behind, hidden in the care of the royal lineage, knowing that one day when the darkness returned, a worthy heir would need to find them, to restore them, and to use them. For generations, the rusted sword and shield were passed down through the royal family, not as heirlooms to be displayed, but as secrets to be guarded. They were kept in hidden chambers, wrapped in cloth that had been blessed by the priests of the old faith. Their existence was known only to the monarch and their most trusted advisors. The common people of Galar told stories of the heroes of many battles, but they did not know that the very tools of those heroes were still within their midst, waiting. The restoration of the rusted sword and shield in the modern era was not a single event, but a process that unfolded over years. It began when a young trainer, guided by the whispers of the Weald and the strange pull of destiny, discovered the hidden chamber beneath the old castle. It continued when the artifacts were brought into the light, for the first time in centuries, their surfaces dull with age, their edges blunted by time. And it culminated when that trainer, standing before the slumbering forms of Zacian and Zamazenta, held the sword and shield aloft and felt the ancient connection reawaken. The rust did not simply fall away. It dissolved as if it had been a shell, a chrysalis. Beneath it, the metal gleamed with a light that was not reflected from the sun, but emitted from within. The sword became a blade of pure condensed will. The shield became a barrier of unbreakable resolve, and the wolves, sensing the call, opened their eyes. They rose from the earth slowly, their movements creaking with the stiffness of ages. As they stood, the forest around them seemed to lean back to make space. The vines that had grown over them crumbled to dust. The moss that had covered them fell away like old bandages, and they stepped forward, not as relics of a forgotten past, but as living legends, reborn into a world that still needed them. The bond between the wolves and the sovereign lineage of Galar was never broken, even in the long centuries of sleep. It was merely dormant, waiting for the right hand to hold the sword, the right arm to bear the shield. And when that hand and arm appeared, the bond reasserted itself with a force that shook the very foundations of the region. The wolves did not serve the new monarch. They stood beside them as equals, as partners, as the ancient protectors they had always been. The slumbering Weald, once a place of quiet and forgetting, became a place of awakening. The trees seemed to stand taller. The streams began to flow in their proper directions. The air, which had been heavy with the weight of waiting, lightened, and the people of Galar, though they did not fully understand what had happened, felt a shift in the atmosphere. A sense that something old and powerful had returned to its proper place. Zacian and Zamazenta had not come back to rule. They had come back to fulfill their purpose once more. And as they stood at the edge of the Weald, looking out over the region they had saved so long ago, they knew that their story was not over. It was simply beginning a new chapter. The heroes of many battles had rested, and now they were ready to fight again. But even as they prepared for the conflicts to come, there was another figure stirring in the shadows of Galar's history. A presence that had been waiting even longer than the wolves. In the frozen reaches of the Crown Tundra, a king was beginning to stir, a ruler who had once commanded the very forces of nature, and whose story would soon intertwine with the fate of the region in ways no one could yet foresee. Zacian and Zamazenta had retreated into the slumbering Weald, their work done, their legend sealed in rust and silence. But while the twin heroes slept, another story was unfolding in the far north of Galar, a story that began long before the darkest day, and would end only when a king reclaimed what was rightfully his. This is the tale of Calyrex, the king of bountiful harvests, and the two loyal steeds who carried his reign across the frozen Crown Tundra, long before Galar had its league, its cities, or its modern name. The Crown Tundra was a place of harsh beauty, a land of snow and ice where survival was a daily struggle. The people who lived there were hardy and resilient, but they were also dependent on the land for food, for warmth, for everything, and the land was not always kind. Winters could be brutal, summers short, and the soil often refused to yield its bounty. It was in this unforgiving landscape that a legend was born, a legend of a Pokémon who appeared not as a beast of war, but as a bringer of life. Calyrex was no ordinary Pokémon. It was a being of immense psychic power, a creature whose very presence seemed to soothe the land and coax growth from the frozen earth. The people of the Crown Tundra saw Calyrex, and they did not fear it. They revered it. They called it their king. And in return for their faith and their devotion, Calyrex blessed them with harvests so abundant that the land seemed to sing. Fields that had been barren for generations suddenly burst forth with golden grain. Orchards that had never borne fruit became heavy with apples and berries. The people prospered, and they built a kingdom in the ice, a kingdom ruled not by force, but by gratitude. But here is the truth that every god must learn, whether in myth or in Pokémon lore. Faith is a fragile thing. It is built on hope, on the belief that the unseen hand will continue to provide. And when that hand falters, even for a moment, the faith can crumble like old snow. Calyrex's reign was not eternal. The harvests were bountiful, but they were not infinite. Seasons changed, and the land, as it always does, demanded its rest. A winter came that was longer and colder than any the people had ever known. The crops failed, the stores ran low, and the people, who had once sung praises to their king, began to whisper doubts. Where was Calyrex now? Why had the harvest stopped? Had the king abandoned them? Or worse, was the king ever truly powerful at all? The whispers grew louder, and the faith that had sustained Calyrex for so long began to drain away. And as the faith faded, so too did the king's power. For Calyrex was not a god of independent might, not like the cosmic forces of Dialga or the raw elemental fury of Groudon. Calyrex's power was symbiotic, drawn from the belief and the gratitude of the people it served. Without that belief, the king became weak, its psychic energy waning, its ability to command the land slipping away like mist in the morning sun. This is the tragedy of the king of bountiful harvests. It was not defeated by a rival, not sealed away by a hero, not banished to a distant realm. It was simply forgotten. The people of the Crown Tundra moved on. They adapted to the harsh winters. They found new ways to survive. And Calyrex, once the center of their world, became a memory, a story told to children around the fire, a name that slowly lost its meaning. The king retreated into the frozen wilderness, alone, its power diminished, its kingdom reduced to a patch of ice and snow. But Calyrex was not entirely without allies. In the days of its glory, the king had formed a bond with two magnificent steeds, creatures of immense power and loyalty. The first was Glastria, a horse of pure ice, its body encased in a crystalline armor that could shatter mountains. The second was Spectria, a horse of shadow and ghostly energy, its mane trailing like smoke, its hooves silent on the frozen ground. These two steeds were Calyrex's partners, its companions, its connection to the wild forces of the Crown Tundra. Together, they had ridden across the land, the king's psychic energy flowing through them, amplifying their power and spreading the blessings of the harvest. But when the people's faith faltered, the bond between Calyrex and its steeds was broken, not by malice, not by betrayal, but by the simple erosion of time and memory. Glastria and Spectria wandered the Crown Tundra on their own, each becoming a legend in its own right. Glastria was said to be the embodiment of winter's fury, a beast that could freeze the sea with a single breath. Spectria was the phantom of the night, a creature of shadow that could pass through walls and disappear into the mist. They were feared, respected, but never understood. And Calyrex, without its steeds, was a king without a throne, a ruler without a realm. For centuries, the Crown Tundra remained a place of cold and silence. The people who lived there forgot the old stories, or they turned them into fairy tales, harmless fancies for children. But the land itself remembered. The soil remembered the touch of the king's psychic energy. The ice remembered the hooves of the steeds. And deep in the frozen heart of the tundra, Calyrex waited, patient and alone, hoping that one day someone would remember too. That day came as all days do in the modern era. A trainer, drawn by rumors of ancient ruins and legendary Pokémon, ventured into the Crown Tundra. They explored the frozen plains, climbed the icy mountains, and descended into the depths of the Dynatree Hill. And there, in a quiet grove, they found Calyrex, not as a mighty king, but as a lonely figure, its power barely a flicker, its eyes filled with the weight of ages. The trainer did not mock the king. They did not dismiss it as a relic of a forgotten age. They listened, and in that listening, they offered something that Calyrex had not felt in centuries: faith. The king sensed it, that fragile spark of belief, and it began to grow. Calyrex spoke to the trainer, not in words, but in visions, showing them the history of the Crown Tundra, the glory of its reign, the tragedy of its fall, and the bond it had once shared with Glastria and Spectria. The trainer understood. They set out to find the two steeds, to reunite them with their king, to restore what had been lost. It was no easy task. Glastria was found in the frozen wastes of the Crown Shrine, a creature of pure instinct, its heart as cold as the ice that encased it. Spectria was hidden in the shadowy depths of the old cemetery, a ghostly figure that fled from the light. But the trainer was persistent, and with the help of the king's guidance, they convinced each steed to return. The reunion was not a battle, it was a recognition. Glastria and Spectria remembered their king, and Calyrex remembered them. The bond that had been broken by the loss of faith was reforged by the presence of a single, believing heart. When Calyrex mounted its steed, whether the icy power of Glastria or the shadowy grace of Spectria, the transformation was immediate. The king's psychic energy surged, flooding the Crown Tundra with a warmth that had not been felt in centuries. The ice did not melt, but it softened. The soil, long frozen and barren, began to stir, and in the spring that followed, the harvests returned, not as a miracle, but as a restoration. The land remembered its king, and the king remembered its purpose. Calyrex's story is not one of cosmic creation or world-ending destruction. It is a story about the nature of belief itself. The king was powerful, yes, but its power was never its own. It was a gift, a reflection of the hope that people placed in it. And when that hope was withdrawn, the king faded. Not because it was weak, but because it was honest. Calyrex did not force the people to believe. It accepted their doubt and their forgetfulness, and it waited, patient and enduring, for someone to believe again. In the end, the king of bountiful harvests was restored, not by conquest, not by force, but by the simple act of being remembered. And that is a lesson that echoes through all of Pokémon mythology. The legends are not just stories. They are living memories, kept alive by the faith of those who tell them. When we forget, they fade. When we remember, they return. And now, as we leave the frozen Crown Tundra behind, we turn our gaze to a different kind of ruin. A ruin not of ice and snow, but of ancient greed and buried calamity. For in the region of Paldea, there are treasures that were never meant to be found. Treasures that carry the weight of a kingdom's downfall and the curse of those who sought to possess them. This is the story of the treasures of ruin. The king of bountiful harvests faded from the world, not because it was defeated, but because it was forgotten. Calyrex, once the sovereign of all it surveyed in the Crown Tundra, lost its grip on power when human faith dwindled to nothing. And that is the quiet tragedy of many gods in the Pokémon world. They do not die in battle, they simply starve on the altar of neglect. But what happens when the opposite is true? What happens when humanity does not forget a power, but actively worships it, feeds it, and in doing so, corrupts it beyond recognition? That is the story we must now turn to, in a land far from the frozen north, in the sun-baked region of Paldea. The Paldean legends speak of a time when human civilization was young, and ambition was a fire that burned hotter than reason. In those days, the people of what is now Paldea discovered 4 artifacts of immense power. They were not weapons in the traditional sense, nor were they tools of creation. They were vessels, crafted from the materials of the earth itself, designed to hold something far more dangerous than any blade or spell. They were meant to contain the very essence of human desire, greed, and malice. But the containers were only as strong as the will of those who wielded them. And the will of ancient Paldea was weak. The 4 artifacts were known by many names, but the most ancient records call them the treasures of ruin. Each one was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, carved from a different substance of the natural world. There was a set of wooden tablets, etched with symbols that predate any known language. There was a sword, forged from a fang that fell from a beast no living eye has ever seen. There was a vessel, shaped from stone, that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And there was a set of beads, each one a polished gem that glowed with an inner fire. These were not mere trinkets, they were prisons, and they were failing. The legend tells us that the artifacts were created by a civilization that understood the darkness within the human heart. They knew that greed, envy, wrath, and despair were not abstract concepts, but tangible forces that could be harnessed. And so they built these vessels to contain those forces, to keep them from spilling out into the world. But the vessels were never meant to be opened. They were meant to be sealed away, hidden from the eyes of the greedy and the foolish. And for a time, they were. The artifacts were buried in the earth, locked in shrines that were guarded by the most devoted of keepers. The civilization that built them eventually crumbled, as all civilizations do, but the shrines remained, silent and patient. But patience is a virtue that humanity has never fully mastered. Over the centuries, the memory of the artifacts faded into myth, and the shrines became nothing more than landmarks on an old map until someone found them. And when they did not see a warning, they saw a treasure. The first of the treasures of ruin to be unearthed was the set of wooden tablets. They were discovered in a dried-up riverbed, buried beneath layers of silt and time. The tablets were covered in a script that no scholar could decipher, but the energy they radiated was undeniable. Whoever held them felt a surge of power, a whisper of ancient knowledge. But the tablets were not a gift. They were a trap. The malice that had been sealed within them for millennia began to seep out, and it took a form. That form was Wo-Cheen. Wo-Cheen is the embodiment of the grudge that grows from the soil of betrayal. It is a being of slow, creeping ruin, a creature that does not strike with a lightning, but with the patient decay of a forest, overtaking a forgotten temple. Its body is composed of the very tablets that imprisoned it, now fused with its will. Vines and moss cling to its form, not as decoration, but as a shroud. Wo-Cheen does not move quickly, but it does not need to. Its power is the power of erosion, of the slow wearing down of all things. It is the curse of the land that remembers every broken promise, every stolen inheritance, every seed of greed that was planted and left to rot. The second treasure was a sword, and it was found not in the earth, but in the ice. High in the mountains of Paldea, a glacier cracked open, and within it, a blade of pure white was revealed. The sword was perfect, unblemished, and it sang with a cold that was not of this world. Those who found it were entranced by its beauty, by the way it seemed to hunger for a wielder. But the sword was not a weapon of honor. It was a weapon of wrath, and its master was Qianpao. Qianpao is the embodiment of the hatred that freezes the heart. It is a being of bitter cold, of the kind of anger that does not burn but numbs. Its body is the sword itself, and its presence brings a frost that kills everything it touches. But Qianpao is not merely a force of winter. It is a force of resentment, of the grudges that are nursed in silence until they become unbreakable. The legend says that Qianpao was born from the malice of a warrior who was betrayed by his own kin, who died in the snow with a curse on his lips. That curse found a home in the sword, and it has been waiting ever since for a hand to wield it. But no hand can wield Qianpao. It wields itself. The third treasure was the vessel of stone, and it was found in the deepest cavern beneath the Paldean earth. It was a bowl, black as obsidian, and it seemed to drink the light from the torches of those who discovered it. The vessel was heavy, not just with weight, but with something else, something that pressed against the mind. It was a container for despair, and when it was finally opened, that despair poured out and became Tinglu. Tinglu is the embodiment of the dread that comes from the earth itself. It is a being of immense crushing weight, both physical and spiritual. Its form is that of a great horned beast, but its true power lies in the vibrations it sends through the ground. These are not mere tremors. They are waves of fear, of hopelessness, of the certainty that all things will eventually be buried and forgotten. Tinglu does not need to attack its enemies. It simply exists, and the weight of its presence is enough to break the spirit of anyone who stands before it. The legend says that Tinglu was born from the grief of a king who watched his entire kingdom sink into the earth, who felt the ground swallow his people one by one, and whose sorrow was so vast that it could not be contained. It found a home in the stone vessel, and it has been waiting for the Wordle to remember its pain. The fourth and final treasure was the set of beads, and they were found in the ruins of an ancient temple. Scattered across the floor as if someone had dropped them in a panic, each bead was a different colour, and each one burned with a different flame. They were beautiful, and they were deadly. When they were gathered together, they ignited the air itself, and from that fire emerged Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu is the embodiment of the envy that consumes everything it touches. It is a being of pure, searing heat, of the kind of jealousy that does not just want what others have, but wants to destroy it so that no one can have it. Its body is a swirling mass of flames, and the beads that once imprisoned it now orbit it like a crown of thorns. Chi-Yu does not reason. It does not negotiate. It burns. The legend says that Chi-Yu was born from the spite of a sorcerer who was denied the throne, who set fire to his own city rather than see it ruled by another. That fire never went out. It was sealed in the beads, and it has been waiting for a spark to reignite it. These four beings, Huoqian, Xianpaotinglu and Xiu, are not gods. They are not guardians. They are consequences. They are the physical manifestations of the worst parts of the human soul, given form and fury. And when they were unleashed upon ancient Paldea, the civilization that had created them was nearly destroyed. The land was choked by vines, frozen by ice, shattered by tremors and scorched by fire. The people who survived realized their mistake. They had tried to contain darkness, but they had only given it a shape. The solution was not to destroy the artifacts. They could not be destroyed. The malice within them was too old, too strong. Instead, the survivors gathered the four treasures and sealed them once more. But this time they did not hide them in the earth. They built 4 shrines, each one dedicated to containing a single treasure. The shrines were placed at the 4 corners of Paldea, far from each other, so that the powers could not combine, and they were locked with a key that only the pure of heart could turn. The shrines were guarded by the descendants of the original keepers, and for generations the treasures of ruin slept. But the world does not stay still. Empires rise and fall. Knowledge is lost and rediscovered. And in the modern era, the shrines were found again, not by the greedy, not by the malicious, but by explorers and historians who did not understand what they were opening. The seals were broken, one by one, and the treasures of ruin began to stir. They are not fully awake yet. They are patient. They have waited this long, but they are aware and they are hungry. The story of the treasures of ruin is a warning, but it is also a mirror. It asks a question that every civilization must answer. What do you do with the darkness you create? Do you bury it, hoping it will never be found? Do you lock it away, trusting that the locks will hold forever? Or do you confront it, knowing that the cost of confrontation may be everything you have? The people of ancient Paldea chose to bury and lock, and they passed that burden to the future. Now the future is here, and the locks are breaking. And this is not the only mystery that Paldea holds. The region is a place of contradictions, of ancient ruins and modern technology, of legends that refuse to stay buried. But there is another story in Paldea, one that does not come from the past, but from a place that is neither past nor future. It is a story of 2 beings who are not bound by time, who exist in a paradox that defies all explanation. That story is the story of the paradox of time, and it is waiting for us just ahead. The treasures of ruin remind us that human nature, left unchecked, can corrupt even the most sacred objects. But what happens when the corruption is not of objects, but of time itself? What happens when the past and the future collide in a single, impossible moment, leaving the present to pick up the pieces of a shattered timeline? This is the paradox that lies at the heart of the Paldea region, a mystery so deep it defies all conventional understanding of history. It is a mystery that begins not with a legend passed down through generations, but with a crater, a wound in the earth that has existed for as long as anyone can remember. The great crater of Paldea, a chasm so vast and so deep that its bottom has never been fully explored. The people of the region have always known it was there, a silent, watchful presence at the center of their land. They built their towns and cities around it. They told stories about it, but they never truly understood it. For centuries, the crater was a forbidden place, a realm of myth and superstition. It was said that strange lights flickered at its depths, that impossible sounds echoed from its walls, and that anyone who descended into its darkness would never return. And so, the crater remained a mystery, a blank space on the map of human knowledge. But in the modern era, science finally caught up with myth. The Paldea region, always a land of academic pursuit and discovery, established a research facility within the crater. They called it the Area Zero Research Station, and its mission was simple: to uncover the secrets of the Great Crater. What they found there would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the history of Pokémon, and about the very nature of time itself. The first discovery was the Terra phenomenon, a strange crystalline energy that permeated the crater, causing Pokémon to transform into radiant, gemstone-like forms. This energy, known as terrestrialization, was unlike anything ever seen before. It seemed to amplify a Pokémon's innate power, but it also did something far stranger. It seemed to unlock something deep within them, a connection to a past or a future that should not exist. And then, the researchers found them. Two Pokémon unlike any ever documented. They called them Corydon and Miraidon. On the surface, they appeared to be ancient relatives of the modern Cyclizar, a common lizard Pokémon used for transport across Paldea. But these were no ordinary Cyclizar. Corydon was a creature of raw primal power, its body built for a world of harsh, untamed wilderness. Its scales were thick, its claws were sharp, and its eyes held the fire of a prehistoric age. Miraidon, by contrast, was sleek and mechanical, its body a marvel of futuristic engineering. Its skin was smooth and metallic, its movements were precise and fluid, and its eyes glowed with the cold light of advanced technology. One was a ghost of the past, the other a phantom of the future, and they were both here, in the present, living within the same crater. The researchers were baffled. How could a creature from the ancient past coexist with a creature from a distant future? The answer, they soon realized, lay in the Terra crystals. The energy that permeated Area Zero was not just a power source, it was a temporal anomaly, a fracture in the fabric of time itself. The crystals, it seemed, were not native to this era. They had fallen from the sky in a meteorite long ago, and their impact had created the Great Crater. But the crystals were not just rocks, they were vessels, carrying the essence of other times, other realities. When they struck the Earth, they created a wound in time, a place where the past and the future could bleed through into the present. And so Corydon and Miraidon were not native to Paldea. They were refugees, stranded in a time that was not their own. Corydon had been pulled from the ancient past, a world of giant Pokémon and untamed nature, where survival was a constant struggle. Miraidon had been pulled from a distant future, a world of advanced technology and artificial life, where the line between organic and machine had long since blurred. They were both lost, both alone, and both trapped in a world that could never truly understand them. This discovery raised a profound ethical dilemma. The Terra crystals were not just a scientific curiosity. They were a tool, a means of manipulating time itself. The researchers at Area Zero had learned to harness the Terra energy, to use it to power their technology and to enhance their Pokémon. But what were the consequences of this manipulation? Were they, by using the Terra crystals, further destabilizing the temporal anomaly? Were they risking a catastrophic collapse of the timeline? And what about Corydon and Miraidon? Were they simply specimens to be studied? Or were they living beings, deserving of a chance to return to their own times? The Terra Archipelago, as the research facility was sometimes called, became a place of moral ambiguity. The scientists, they were not villains. They were explorers, driven by a thirst for knowledge. But their actions had unintended consequences. They were playing with forces they did not fully understand, forces that could unravel the very fabric of reality. The Terra crystals were a gift, but they were also a curse. They offered the power to transcend time, but at a cost that no one could fully calculate. And then there was the question of the paradox Pokémon. The researchers soon discovered that Corydon and Miraidon were not the only temporal anomalies within the crater. Other Pokémon from other times had also been pulled through the fracture. Ancient relatives of modern species with features that seemed more at home in a prehistoric jungle or a futuristic city. These creatures were called paradox Pokémon, and they were a living testament to the instability of the crater. They were fragments of broken timelines, scattered across the present like pieces of a shattered mirror. The existence of these Pokémon raised even more questions. Were they conscious of their displacement? Did they feel the pain of being torn from their own era? And what would happen if the temporal anomaly grew wider, if more and more creatures from other times began to pour into the present? The researchers knew they were standing on the edge of a precipice. They had discovered something incredible, but they had also opened a door that might never be closed. The story of Area Zero is a story of hubris and humility. It is a reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, that some forces are beyond human control. The Terra crystals are a symbol of the power of time, but they are also a warning. Time is not a river that can be dammed or diverted. It is a vast interconnected web, and any disturbance, no matter how small, can send ripples across the entire fabric of existence. And so the Great Crater remains, a silent monument to the paradox of time. Corydon and Miraidon still roam its depths, two souls adrift in a world that is not their own. They are the living embodiment of a question that has no easy answer. What do we owe to the past? What do we owe to the future? And how do we navigate the fragile, precious present, knowing that it is built on the ruins of what came before and the seeds of what is yet to come? The researchers at Area Zero continue their work, but they do so with a new sense of caution. They have seen the power of time, and they know that it is not to be trifled with. The Terra crystals are a tool, but they are also a responsibility, and the fate of the timeline, the fate of all times, may rest on how that responsibility is wielded. As we leave the Great Crater, we carry with us the haunting image of those two Pokémon, one ancient and one futuristic, standing side by side in a world that should not contain them. They are a reminder that time is not a straight line, but a tangled, beautiful, and terrifying knot, and the secrets of that knot are far from fully unraveled, for there are other mysteries, hidden in the shadows of the Pokémon world, that have yet to be uncovered. The hidden mythicals, the ones that dwell on the edges of legend, are waiting for their stories to be told. And those stories, like the paradox of time itself, may challenge everything we think we know. The previous chapter left us deep within the Great Crater of Paldea, where the boundaries of time itself seemed to bend around the paradoxical forms of Corydon and Miraidon. We witnessed how ancient history and distant futures can collide in a single, impossible moment. But the Pokémon world is filled with beings that operate on a much smaller, more intimate scale. Not every mythical Pokémon is tied to the fabric of space-time or the collapse of civilizations. Some of them are woven into the quiet moments of human existence, the small joys that make life worth living. And it is here, in the hidden corners of folklore and the gentle rhythms of daily life, that we find some of the most overlooked legends of all. Consider Shaman, the gratitude Pokémon. In the mythology of Sinnoh, Shaman is not a creator or a destroyer. It does not command the weather or warp reality. Instead, it is said to bloom from the gratitude felt by living hearts. When a person or a Pokémon experiences true thankfulness, the legend says, the energy of that emotion can crystallize into a small, hedgehog-like creature that purifies the air around it. There is a famous story from the Flower Paradise, a secluded island where shaman are said to gather. According to local tradition, a young girl once lost her way in a blizzard. She was cold and afraid, but a group of shaman appeared, surrounding her with warmth and clearing the snow with the power of their gratitude. They guided her home, not through any grand cosmic intervention, but through the simple act of caring. This is the essence of shaman. It represents the idea that joy and kindness can manifest as living beings, that the world responds to our emotional states in ways we can barely understand. Then there is Victini, the victory Pokémon. Its name is a portmanteau of victory and tiny, and that is exactly what it is. A small, rabbit-like creature that carries within it an infinite amount of energy. In Univern folklore, Victini is said to bring victory to any trainer who befriends it, but the legend is more nuanced than simple combat success. The old stories speak of a village that was once threatened by a volcanic eruption. The people prayed for a savior, and Victini appeared, not to fight the volcano, but to fill the villagers with such unwavering confidence that they work together to divert the lava flow. Victini's power is not about winning battles. It is about the unshakable belief that success is possible. It embodies the human spirit of perseverance, the quiet flame of hope that refuses to be extinguished. In a world of gods and monsters, Victini reminds us that sometimes the greatest power is the simple certainty that we can overcome. Meloetta, the melody Pokémon, takes this idea even further. In the lore of Unova, Meloetta is said to have sung a song so beautiful that it ended a terrible war. The legend describes a time when two kingdoms were locked in endless conflict. The land was scarred, and the people had forgotten how to smile. Then, from the ruins of a temple, a voice began to sing. It was Meloetta, and its melody carried the memories of peace, of love, of shared humanity. The soldiers stopped fighting, the kings laid down their arms, and the war simply ended. Not through force, but through the power of music. Meloetta's two forms, aria and pirouette, represent the dual nature of art, the gentle, flowing beauty that soothes the soul, and the energetic, passionate expression that moves the body. It is a living reminder that culture, memory and joy are as essential to survival as food and shelter. These three mythical Pokémon, Shaman, Victini and Meloetta, occupy a unique space in the Pokémon universe. They are not forces of nature or cosmic principles. They are the embodiment of human emotion, the small-scale miracles that make life meaningful. They bridge the gap between folklore and modern reality by showing us that the ancient stories are not just about gods and demons. They are also about gratitude, victory, and music. These are the things that have always mattered to us, and they always will. But not every mythical Pokémon has such gentle origins. Some were born not from emotion or nature, but from the cold hand of human ambition. Magearna is a perfect example. This artificial Pokémon was created over 500 years ago by a brilliant inventor in the Kalos region. According to the historical records preserved in the Pokédex and various museum archives, the inventor built Magearna as a gift for a princess. Its body is made of metal, but its heart is something far more mysterious. The soul heart, a device at the center of Magearna's chest, is said to contain the essence of life itself. It is a mechanical being that can feel, that can love, that can form bonds. Magearna represents the pinnacle of human craftsmanship, a fusion of science and art that blurs the line between the artificial and the natural. In its original form, it was a symbol of peace, a companion for a lonely ruler. But the same technology that created Magearna could be twisted for darker purposes. Enter Genesect. This ancient insect Pokémon was once a peaceful creature that lived in the prehistoric era. It was powerful, but it was not a weapon. Then, hundreds of millions of years later, Team Plasma discovered its fossilized remains. They resurrected Genesect using advanced technology, but they did not stop there. They modified it. They added a cannon to its back, capable of firing elemental blasts. They enhanced its speed and strength. They turned an ancient life form into a living weapon. The Pokédex entries for Genesect are chilling. They describe it as the strongest Pokémon in history, a creature that was brought back from extinction specifically for combat. The irony is profound. Genesect was once a part of the natural world, a creature that lived and died in the age of dinosaurs. Now it is a cyborg, a tool of human conflict. It is a reminder that our ability to create is matched only by our ability to destroy. Morgana and Genesect represent two sides of the same coin. Both are artificial creations, both were made by human hands. But one was built to bring joy, and the other was modified to bring destruction. They force us to ask difficult questions about the role of technology in our lives. Are we creators or conquerors? Do we build to uplift, or do we build to control? These are not just philosophical questions in the Pokémon world. They are questions with real consequences, as the existence of these two mythical Pokémon proves. And yet, even in the darkness of Genesect's story, there is a glimmer of hope. The original Genesect, before Team Plasma's modifications, was a creature of instinct and survival. It was not evil, it was simply trying to live. And in the modern era, some trainers have formed bonds with Genesect, proving that even a weapon can learn to trust again. This is the hidden truth of the mythical Pokémon. They are not just relics of the past or anomalies of the present. They are mirrors, reflecting our own nature back at us. Shaymin shows us our gratitude, Victini shows us our hope, Meloetta shows us our joy, Morgana shows us our creativity, and Genesect shows us our capacity for both destruction and redemption. As we prepare to close this chapter, we must remember that the line between folklore and modern reality is thinner than we think. The stories we tell about these hidden mythicals are not just fairy tales. They are records of real events, real emotions, and real choices. The Pokémon world is filled with beings that exist at the edges of our understanding, waiting to be discovered. And in the next chapter, we will turn our attention to the vast repository of knowledge that holds all of these stories together. We will explore the library of the ancients, the archive of all that has been lost and found. The eternal archive awaits, and within its silent halls, the truth of every legend is preserved. And so the hidden mythicals, those quiet keepers of joy and sorrow, those crafted marvels and ancient weapons, remind us that not every legend is carved into the mountains of time. Some myths live in a child's wish, in the turning of a season, in the song that passes between generations. But even these small threads are part of a tapestry far older than any single region remembers. For every myth, whether whispered in Alola or etched into the glaciers of Galar, belongs to one continuous story, a single timeline stretching from the void before creation to the silence of the present day. We have traced the arcs of time itself with Dialga, crossed the infinite expanse with Palkia, and peered into the distortion where Giratina dwells. We have watched Groudon raise continents and Kyogre drown them, only for a Quasar to bring balance from the sky. We have seen Ho-Oh resurrect the fallen into living legends, and we have walked the burned ground of Ecruteak, where death gave way to renewal. Each region's myth cycle is a chapter in a single book, and that book tells the same story over and over. The story of a universe struggling to hold itself together against the ambitions of those who would tip the scales. Think of it this way. The Sinnoh creation myths speak of Arceus shaping the fundamental forces. The Hoenn myths describe the world being remade by primal clashes. The Unovan legends recount a dragon split by human ideology. The Kalos cycle tells of life and death held in delicate equilibrium. And in Paldea, we find treasures of ruin born from human greed and malice. What all these stories share is a deep awareness that balance is not a natural state, but a constant effort. The cosmos is a machine that requires careful tending, and every legendary Pokémon, whether a cosmic principle or a guardian spirit or a resurrected beast, is a cog in that machine. Yet there is one being who stands apart from all these cycles, the original mover, the architect of the machine itself, Arceus, the first being to emerge from the void, the one who shaped time and space and antimatter, who gifted knowledge, emotion, and willpower to the creatures who would later call themselves human. Arceus is mentioned in nearly every regional myth, sometimes as a distant creator, sometimes as a hidden force, but always as the silent origin. And that silence is perhaps the greatest mystery of all. Why does Arceus not speak directly to the modern world? The ancient texts say Arceus created the universe and then withdrew. The legends of Sinnoh describe the azure flute, a relic that could summon the creator. But even that has faded into obscurity. The modern age of Pokémon is filled with trainers, researchers, and explorers who have encountered Dialga and Palkia, who have calmed Groudon and Kyogre, who have even befriended Mew and Ho-Oh, but no living soul in recorded history has stood before Arceus and heard its voice. The closest we have are the distortions in time and space, the faint echoes of its power that ripple through the fabric of reality. Some say Arceus is watching, testing humanity and Pokémon to see if they can maintain the balance it set in motion. Others believe the creator became so distant that it no longer recognizes the world it made, and still others whisper that Arceus is not silent at all, that its voice is woven into every sunrise, every tectonic shift, every breath of a newborn Pokémon, and that we have simply forgotten how to listen. Perhaps that is the final lesson of the Eternal Archive. All the myths, all the legends, all the histories we have collected across every region, from the burning towers of Johto to the crystal caves of Sinnoh, from the sealed chambers of Hoenn to the crown tundra of Galar, they are not separate stories. They are fragments of a single narrative, a narrative about the relationship between ambition and order, between creation and destruction, between the small wills of mortals and the vast will of the universe. Every legendary Pokémon, every mythical wanderer, every ancient calamity, every burst of light from an ultra wormhole is a thread in that weaving, and at the center of that weaving, silent still, sits Arceus, the origin, the question, the reminder that for all our knowledge, for all our progress, for all the Pokeballs we carry, and the battles we win, there is something just beyond the edge of our understanding, something that has been there since before time began, and something that will remain long after the last trainer has hung up their hat. The murmurs of the Hidden Mythicals fade into the distant hum of a world that keeps turning. The storms of Kyogre and Groudon have stilled. For now, the swords of the brave have been returned to their wield. The treasures of ruin sleep beneath the earth, and somewhere in a dimension that bends around no known law, Arceus listens, or waits, or simply exists, a fixed point in a universe of change. This is the Eternal Archive, and we have only scratched its surface. The patterns we have traced here, the balance between human ambition and natural order, the way every legend echoes another, the enduring silence of the creator. These are the truths that bind the Pokémon world together. They are not answers. They are invitations. Invitations to wonder, to respect, and to fall asleep knowing that the story is never truly finished. Thank you for walking through this history with me. Sleep well, and may the legends guard your dreams. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.